Chapter 1658 Might of the Ancient Book. Chapter 1658 Might of the Ancient Book. Chapter 1658 Might of the Ancient Book. Across the vast wasteland, the various superpowers hunted bosses with organized precision. Meanwhile, the first-rate guilds and top adventurer teams could only watch from within the safe zone. Although these teams had a few experts who could dodge the lightning strikes, players who could dodge while fighting a Grand Lord were as rare as a phoenix's feather. A level 55 Grand Lord was already an extremely difficult foe, and teams lost players even during a normal raid. Hence, trying to raid one while severely handicapped would simply be suicidal. To compensate for their lack of numbers, the various first-rate guilds and top adventurer teams had tried to pool their experts to raid the bosses. However, despite multiple attempts, they had failed. Although the alliance of the various first-rate guilds and adventurer teams had formed allowed them to build a raid team with sufficient manpower, the environment favored the Grand Lord-ranked Thunder Elementals and Thunder Beasts. The third floor's environment enhanced all lightning-type skills and spells by 30%. Cloth armor classes, which had low HP and defense, would likely die instantly if they failed to dodge the Thunder Elementals or Thunder Beast skills. 0 mistakes were allowed in battle. However, players would be hard-pressed to avoid mistakes while constantly bombarded with lightning. In the end, the Alliance team wiped after losing so many members midway through the battle. As the first-rate guilds and top adventurer teams rested, Sherfone led his entire team into the lightning zone. It was as if he had missed their tragic downfall after fighting in the wasteland. They're going all together? Have Zero Wings members lost their minds? What are they trying to do? Even if a single death only costs 20% EXP, do they have to be so reckless? When the members of the various first-rate guilds and adventurer teams saw Zero Wing head into the plains, they thought that Zero Wing's members had gone mad. In this lightning wasteland, a player's basic attributes didn't matter as much as on the previous floors. Here, combat standards were far more important. Even if a team charged into the lightning wasteland with 1,000 members, each member would suffer the same number of lightning strikes. In fact, the players would have a higher chance of being struck. This was because players would have less space to maneuver in a larger group. Moreover, if players were not careful when they dodged, they'd likely avoid their own lightning strike only to get hit by their neighbors. The various powers weren't the only ones confused by Sherfeng's ludicrous decision. Even Zero Wings members were confused. They had seen how the experts from the various first-rate guilds and top adventurer teams had ended up after fighting in the wasteland. They also knew that those expert standards were much stronger than theirs. If they rushed into the plains, they'd doubtlessly suffer a similar fate. As Zero Wings members approached the safe zone's boundary and were about to enter the lightning zone, they couldn't help their growing nerves. Why are they here? Wild Ocean, who currently fought within the zone, was surprised to notice Zero Wings' team enter the lightning wasteland. Are they that tired of living? Zero Wings' team had over 1,000 members, and if it tried to enter the zone with so many players, the number of lightning strikes that would descend on the team would be staggering. Not even superpowers like King's Return would pull such a stunt. Could Zero Wing be experimenting and trying to see how many of its members can survive a battle in the lightning zone? Praying Lotus, who was casting a healing spell, was just as stunned to see Zero Wings advance. As the various superpowers members wondered, one player from Zero Wing after another stepped into the zone. Watching 1,000+ players set foot into the lightning wasteland was extraordinarily eye-catching. Almost everyone kept a curious eye on Zero Wing's team, wondering how it planned to deal with the countless lightning strikes that would fall upon them. 3 seconds passed. 5 seconds passed. 10 seconds. However, not a single strike of lightning fell on Zero Wing's team. Every member on the team was alive and kicking, and they had an easy time defeating the multiple chieftain-ranked Thunder Elementals and Thunder Beasts that had charged at them. Where is the lightning? Why do those chieftain-ranked Thunder Elementals and Thunder Beasts seem weaker than the ones we're fighting? The watching players were stunned as they sent Zero Wing's team sidelong glances. They could not understand what was going on. Where were the lightning strikes that were supposed to descend? Could the lightning strikes have stopped because they have more people? Purple Jade was greatly confused as she watched Zero Wing's members. The lightning was the most troublesome aspect about the Primordial Divine Ruins' third underground floor. Without the lightning strikes, the third floor's trial would just be a simple series of Grand Lord raids. If that were the case, the various superpowers could easily clear the floor. That's not possible. Other teams have dispatched even more players than Zero Wing in past raids, but this has never happened, Yuan Tiexin said, shaking his head. He, too, wore a confused look. Even Zero Wing's players were confused. Only Aqua Rose knew that this was Shifeng's doing. It seems this thing is quite effective. Shifeng smiled at the ancient weather book in his hands. The ancient weather book could change the weather in a 2,000-yard radius for 2 hours. Removing the thunderclouds in a specific area was a small task for the item. Without the lightning strikes, the third floor's trial posed no threat to his team members. Very quickly, Zero Wing's team located a level 55 Grand Lord ranked Thunder Beast. Great Thunder Wolf, Thunder Beast, Grand Lord. Level 55. HP 88, 000, 000/88, 000, 000. Now, the boss, which had given the various superpowers painful headaches, was an ordinary Grand Lord to Zero Wing. With Cola, Turtledove, and Yuwamian taking the lead, and the Magic Light Team's MTs tanking the nearby mobs, the rest of the team could focus on dealing damage. Moreover, without the lightning environment's boost, the Great Thunder Wolf's attacks were little more than tickles to Cola and his fellow MTs. The Grand Lord's normal attacks only dealt around -8,000 damage, while its skill attacks only dealt around -20,000. Even without Turtledove and Yuwamian's assistance, Cola could easily tank the Great Thunder Wolf. The other players launched frenzied attacks at the Great Thunder Wolf, each dealing several thousand damage. As the team fought, the Grand Lord's HP visibly decreased. Naturally, this made the various superpowers jealous. The Primordial Divine Ruins bosses weren't like field bosses. Their attributes wouldn't change, regardless of how many players raided them at one time. This meant that the more members a raid team possessed, the greater the team's advantage would be. Zero Wing's team had over 1,000 members, which was more than triple what the other teams possessed. Moreover, Zero Wing's members did not have to worry about avoiding lightning strikes. In less than 5 minutes, the Great Thunder Wolf fell before Zero Wing's members. Everyone on the team also gained a significant amount of EXP. Moreover, the Great Thunder Wolf had dropped 8 items in total thanks to Shifeng's divine providence. Although this didn't seem like much, it was above average for Grand Lords above level 50. When the various superpowers had killed their respective Grand Lords, they only got 5 items. Meanwhile, upon seeing the Great Thunder Wolf's loot, Shifeng had to admit that the Primordial Divine Ruins bosses were far more generous than the bosses in Team Dungeons. Out of the 8 items dropped, 1 was a teleportation stone, and 5 were level 50 weapons and pieces of equipment, 3 of which were fine gold rank and 2 were secret silver rank. The last 2 items were pages of incomplete combat techniques. An advanced combat technique? Shifeng was ecstatic the moment he saw the 2 sheets of lambskin parchment. Basic combat techniques would drop as complete items in the Primordial Divine Ruin, but advanced combat techniques and above would appear as pages. Players would have to gather every page to learn the combat technique. Excited, Shifeng immediately inspected the 2 parchment sheets. Chapter 1659 Top Tier Advanced Combat Technique. Chapter 1659 Top Tier Advanced Combat Technique. Chapter 1659 Top Tier Advanced Combat Technique. As Shifeng inspected the incomplete pages, his eyes shone with excitement. Lightning Flash. This dilapidated page belongs to a book that depicts a secret attack technique, which has been passed down since ancient times. Only after gathering all incomplete pages can you read the complete book's content. There are a total of 13 pages. This leaflet is the 3rd page. Lightning Flash. This dilapidated page belongs to a book that depicts a secret attack technique, which has been passed down since ancient times. Only after gathering all incomplete pages can you read the complete book's content. There are a total of 13 pages. This leaflet is the 6th page. Most of the combat techniques that dropped in the Primordial Divine Ruin were basic combat techniques, and most of them dropped as the complete versions. Although some basic combat techniques dropped as incomplete pages, those were the extreme minority. Normally, only advanced rank or higher combat techniques would drop as individual pages. However, there were differences between advanced combat techniques and those of other ranks. Not only could players in God's domain improve their foundations by learning combat techniques, but they could also learn ways to exhibit their strength more efficiently, thereby raising their overall combat power. Some combat techniques even granted players the power to challenge foes of higher levels. A basic combat technique might not help half-step Refinement Realm experts fight Refinement Realm experts, but an ordinary advanced combat technique could. This was also why the various super guilds and super first-rate guilds were so desperate to compete for slots to enter the Primordial Divine Ruin. Meanwhile, an advanced combat technique's strength could be determined by the number of pages it possessed. An ordinary advanced combat technique would only include 6 to 8 pages, a first-rate advanced combat technique would possess 9 to 12 pages, and a top-tier advanced combat technique would possess 13 to 15 pages. An ordinary advanced combat technique could only help a half-step Refinement Realm expert qualified to fight a Refinement Realm expert. Meanwhile, a first-rate advanced combat technique allowed Refinement Realm experts to face Flowing Water Realm experts. As for top-tier advanced combat techniques, if Flowing Water Realm experts learned one, they could even pose as a threat to Void Realm experts. Even throughout God's domain, Void Realm experts were extremely rare. Yet, with a top-tier advanced combat technique, a Flowing Water Realm expert could stand against Void Realm experts. One could just imagine how valuable such a combat technique was. There was no doubt that Lightning Flash was a top-tier advanced combat technique. Sherfone had never expected to get lucky enough to find a top-tier advanced combat techniques pages, and moreover, it was an attack-type technique. Zero Wing didn't actually have any of these. If it were possible to collect the complete Lightning Flash secret technique, it would certainly help the guild's experts. Learning the technique would likely offer more benefits than the Conqueror's Armor. The Conqueror's Armor only gave its wearer the power to face Refinement Realm experts temporarily, and after all was said and done, it was only a piece of level 50 equipment. Once players leveled up, the equipment would be useless. It could not truly become part of a player's strength. An advanced combat technique was different. Once players learned it, they could put it to good use regardless of their level. It would also offer significant help when players challenged their promotion quests. Moreover, a complete advanced combat technique was different from secret technique tablets. Although the combat techniques one could learn from a secret technique were more powerful than advanced combat techniques, very few players could learn them. It was impossible to share those techniques with a significant number of players. However, a complete advanced combat technique took the form of a book. He could store the book in the guild warehouse, and guild members could read it as they wished. Setting aside whether or not players could actually learn the technique successfully, at the very least, everyone would have the opportunity to learn. In the past, the reason that experts from the various superpowers had an easier time with their promotion quests, rising through the tiers, than experts from first-rate guilds and below wasn't just better weapons and equipment. Rather, it was because their access to combat techniques was superior in both quantity and quality. Thinking up to this point, Sherfone led his team in search of another boss rather than resting. The Ancient Weather book only had a 2-hour duration, whereas it had a 10-hour cooldown. He might be able to wait for such a long time, but the Primordial City would not wait for him. Who knew if the Primordial City had an entry limit? If there wasn't one, they might be alright, but if there were, he and Zero Wing's members would lose their chance to enter the legendary city if they were too late. Hence, he had to cherish every second and minute of these 2 hours. Zero Wing's members continued to hunt one Grand Lord rank Thunder Elemental, or beast after another. When the team encountered a Grand Lord in the barren wasteland, they'd pounce like a pack of hungry wolves. They behaved nothing like the players from the various superpowers, who returned to rest in the starting area after slaying 1 or 2 bosses. The various superpowers grew envious at seeing this. Without the threat from the lightning strikes, Zero Wing could casually slaughter these ready-made Grand Lords. Not only were the team members able to earn an abundance of EXP, but they also secured plenty of top-tier equipment. The Primordial Divine Ruins' third underground floor had practically become a sacred leveling spot for Zero Wing. How is this possible? King's Return's Wild Ocean was at a loss as he watched the scene before him. He had assumed that Zero Wing would be stuck on the third floor, yet based its pace, it'd likely be the first team to reach the fourth underground floor. Uncle Broken, should we contact them? Praying Lotus whispered to Broken City, who stood beside her. Thus far, the various superpowers had only reached the fourth floor. Not one of their teams had made it to the fifth yet. The fourth floor was simply too difficult, and there was no comparing it with the third floor. With the current strength of King's Return's team, it could not clear the fourth floor alone. If King's Return wished to reach the fifth floor, it would have to ally with another team. However, doing so would leave the team fewer entry slots to the fifth floor. No. It is too soon. We'll send them an invite once they experience the fourth floor's wall, Broken City said, smiling as he shook his head. The third floor's trial was child's play compared to the fourth floor. Not only did players have to face all sorts of attacks, but the Guardian boss was also a bona fide level 58 Grand Lord ranked archaic species. Even now, not a single superpower had dealt any damage to the Guardian boss. Although King's Return had prepared thoroughly this time, they had no more than a 30% chance of defeating the Grand Lord. Needless to say, Zero Wing's chances were even lower. While the various powers grinded bosses on the Primordial Divine Ruins' third underground floor, news of Zero Wing's team completing the third floor's trial quickly spread among the participating teams. The various large guilds and top adventurer teams from the kingdoms and empire neighboring the Orc Empire, in particular, had to reevaluate their opinions of the guild. The various superpowers had, thus far, monopolized the Primordial Divine Ruins' fourth floor. The fact that Zero Wing had reached that floor proved that it could nearly rival those superpowers in terms of top-tier experts. At the very least, Zero Wing was definitely superior to first-rate guilds and top adventurer teams in this regard. However, a deathly silence had fallen over the meeting room within Heaven's Burial's ancient Rock City residence due to this latest information. Nobody could have imagined that, in one short day, Heaven's Burial would lose the massive advantage it had cultivated. And it was all due to Zero Wing. First, Zero Wing had shattered ancient Rock City's defensive magic arrays. Then, the guild had plundered their entry slots for the Primordial Divine Ruin. Now, Zero Wing was about to set foot on the ruin's fourth underground floor. Zero Wing! Singular Burial's expression twisted as he read the latest report. Heaven's Burial's reputation was in tatters. If they did not figure out a way to deal with this problem now, the guild would likely have a rocky path ahead even if they held on to ancient Rock City. Singular Burial spun towards Flame Blood, who sat beside him wrapped in bandages, and growled. Flame, didn't you say that Beast Emperor needs the souls of 400,000 elite players to display his full strength in Star Moon Kingdom? Go, tell him that I will fulfill that request. Guild leader, are you planning on giving up on Star Moon Kingdom entirely? Flame Blood could not help his surprise. Beast Emperor's request was no laughing matter. It was both the last and worst option Heaven's Burial had. That's right. Since we can't have Star Moon Kingdom, what's the point in leaving it alive? Singular Burial nodded, a hint of madness flashing in his eyes. Although he did not want to admit it, he had to acknowledge the fact that Heaven's Burial had lost the struggle for Star Moon Kingdom. Regardless of whether or not they defended ancient Rock City, the necessary funds to repair it was still a problem. They also had to pay plenty in bounty claims each day. If they continued the battle with Zero Wing, it would only be a matter of time before the guild was finished, even if Heaven's Burial had the support of major corporations. If he wanted Heaven's Burial to survive, he had to give up on Star Moon Kingdom. I understand. I'll contact Beast Emperor right away. Seeing how serious Singular Burial was, Flame Blood inwardly lamented the fact that the man had become like this. He never thought that a guild like Zero Wing could actually corner Singular Burial, a genius, to this extent. Of the many years he had followed singular burial, this was the first time something like this had ever happened. Chapter 1660 Lightning Flash Secret Technique. Chapter 1660 Lightning Flash Secret Technique. Chapter 1660 Lightning Flash Secret Technique. In a certain mountain range covered with dense forests, countless powerful monsters roamed about the area. Every monster here was above level 100, and quite a few were mythic rank. However, none of these monsters dared to approach the forest in the mountain range's inner regions. Suddenly, a figure appeared at the forest's entrance. It was none other than Flame Blood. When Flame Blood appeared, several massive, humanoid creatures appeared around him, each radiating the terrifying aura only Tier 4 mythic monsters had. Amazing. After not seeing him for some time, he's already developed to this point. Flame Blood was stunned when he noticed the 6 mythic-ranked evil demons around him. Mythic-ranked evil demons. Evil demons were far more difficult to nurture than evil beasts. Previously, Beast Emperor had only been able to nurture a Grand Lord-ranked evil demon. Although Grand Lord-ranked evil demons were very powerful, they were not invincible. If numerous experts worked together, they'd still be able to kill one. However, it was a different story for mythic-ranked evil demons. At this stage of the game, mythic monsters were insurmountable, even to the various superpowers. Otherwise, the level 50 super large-scale team dungeon in God's domain would not stand empty. Moreover, evil demons commanded superior intellect and could exhibit greater combat power than evil beasts. Most importantly, they could be summoned at any time, unlike evil beasts, which could only move from location to location of their own power. Now that Beast Emperor commanded mythic-ranked evil demons, he had the equivalent of mythic-ranked bodyguards at all times. Having mythic-ranked evil demons would undoubtedly increase the safety and survivability of controllers like Beast Emperor by a significant margin. He would no longer have to hide when attacking and could control his armies more efficiently. After seeing these mythic-rank evil demons, Flame Blood's desire to obtain his own grew. Being a member of the Evil God's Temple, every race on the continent of God's domain hunted him constantly. Surviving in the game had become exceedingly difficult. Moreover, if players or NPCs captured him and sent him to the War God's Temple, his character would be sentenced to death in the truest sense, and he'd be forced to start all over again. Hence, he needed to be careful when he moved about and rarely approach a peer before other players. If he had his own mythic-ranked evil demons, though, he wouldn't have to worry about capture unless he encountered a Tier 5 NPC. Fortunately, Tier 5 NPCs were apex powerhouses in God's domain, and they weren't so easy to encounter. Normally, the strongest NPCs players would meet were Tier 4. After the evil demons had a chance to observe Flame Blood for a moment, they retreated back into the forest. Flame Blood then strode into the forest himself. There was a massive crater within the heart of the forest. The crater radiated an evil energy so dense that even an evil god apostle like him gasped as it washed over him. If an ordinary player bathed in this dense evil energy, it would likely corrupt them instantly. This crater was none other than the home of Star Moon Kingdom's Evil God's Temple. As long as players were within range of the temple, its energy would cut off their communication with the outside world. They would not be able to send or receive messages. Flame Blood? A middle-aged man covered in pitch-black ruins sat in the severely dilapidated temple. When he noticed Flame Blood enter the temple, he sent the cleric a glance and asked, "Why are you here? Weren't you controlling your evil demon army to protect ancient Rock City?" Although the man before Flame Blood hadn't expressed any emotion, speaking only in a calm tone, Flame Blood's heart palpitated in fear. This wasn't just because Beast Emperor was one of the Evil God's Temple's evil god envoys, but also because of the horrific evil energy that lingered around him. The man was far more frightening than the last time Flame Blood had seen Beast Emperor. The evil energy Beast Emperor radiated was no weaker than the evil energy the temple itself radiated. This man's evil energy would likely kill ordinary players before they could approach him. Moreover, as Flame Blood looked at Beast Emperor, he could not help but feel as if he stared at a ferocious beast that had just woken from a long slumber. My guild leader sent me, Flame Blood said after stealing his mind. Didn't you say that you needed 400,000 souls from elite players? My guild leader says he can give them to you. He's finally made up his mind? Beast Emperor asked, chuckling. Then, return and tell him this. The day he has the players ready will be the day Zero Wing perishes. Although he was quite powerful and could easily hunt down players for their souls, the immortal souls he needed had to come from willing players. Unfortunately, he was still short 400,000 elite players even after exhausting his means. Otherwise, he would have handed Star Moon Kingdom to the evil god's temple a while ago. Flame Blood nodded in response. He had no doubt regarding Beast Emperor's claim. Others might not know the power Beast Emperor wielded after the evil god's temple had activated, but as a member, Flame Blood knew it very well. Meanwhile, back in the Primordial Divine Ruins' third underground floor, quite some time had passed since the various superpowers had departed for the fourth floor. Only the first-rate guilds and top adventurer teams, which couldn't defeat the bosses, and Zero Wing's team, which still hunted Grand Lord rank thunder beasts and elementals, remained on the third floor. Crap! Just how many Grand Lords must Zero Wing's members kill before they are satisfied? They might be grinding for level 50 top-tier equipment on this floor. After all, opportunities like this don't come often. With how many Grand Lords they've already killed, they should have more than enough teleportation stones. I wonder if they'd be willing to share some with us? Don't even think about it. First, the Primordial City will definitely have an entry limit. It's only natural to let as few players as possible reach the 4th and 5th floors. Moreover, the teleportation stones are bound to players of the same team, and can only be passed around between players on the same team. The stones can also only be used on team members. If the team's member count suddenly increases, the teleportation stones they've collected thus far will become useless. That makes it even less likely that they'd be willing to help us. The various first-rate guilds and top adventurer teams couldn't help but envy Zero Wing's battling members as they searched for treasures on the third floor. When they saw the teleportation stones scattered across the ground, their eyes became bloodshot. Despite all of their effort, they hadn't obtained a single teleportation stone, yet Zero Wing's team didn't even bother to pick up the stones that had dropped. Meanwhile, Shifeng activated Divine Providence as they killed another level 55 Grand Lord rank Thunder Beast. After he collected the loot and inspected it, his brows lifted in joyful surprise. Wonderful! With this, I finally have everything I need. Shifeng could not help his excitement as he gazed at the last page of Lightning Flash. They had raided bosses for nearly 2 hours now. They had even begun to lure 2 or 3 Grand Lords, raiding them at once, midway through their journey. Fortunately, they had collected all 13 unique pages for the Lightning Flash secret technique before the ancient weather book's weather control ran out. System, you have collected all pages for Lightning Flash. Do you wish to synthesize the complete version of it? Synthesizing the complete version will require 1,000 magic crystals. 1,000 crystals? Why so many? Shifeng was confused after reading the system notification. Normally, synthesizing an advanced combat technique only required between 50 and 100 magic crystals, depending on the number of pages the technique possessed. Yet, the combat technique in his hands required 1,000 magic crystals. The system was clearly trying to swindle him. I want to see what kind of combat technique you're going to give me. Shifeng couldn't care less about the cost, however, paying the 1,000 magic crystals without hesitation. After all the trouble he had gone through to collect the pages, he wasn't going to leave them to rot just because the system wanted to rob him. Fortunately, there wasn't much of a difference between 100 magic crystals and 1,000 to Shifeng. Suddenly, with Shifeng at its center, a pitch-black magic array appeared beneath his feet. A powerful stream of mana surged upward from the array, and ignoring the ancient weather book's effects, thunderclouds gathered above, blocking out the sun above Shifeng. Massive lightning bolts then descended from the clouds, striking the 13 incomplete pages that hovered above Shifeng's head. After hundreds of thundering booms echoed throughout the third floor, a thick, ancient tome hovered before Shifeng. Faint arcs of blue electricity danced around the tome. Chapter 1661 Bronze Combat Technique. Chapter 1661 Bronze Combat Technique. Chapter 1661 Bronze Combat Technique. The hundreds of lightning bolts suddenly flashing in the vast wasteland immediately drew the attention of every player on the Primordial Divine Ruins' third underground floor. Compared to the normal lightning strikes, not only were the ones just now much more powerful, but the number and rate at which they appeared were also much higher than before. The resulting thunder also echoed throughout the entire wasteland, hurting everyone's eardrums. "What's going on over there? Why did so many lightning bolts suddenly strike Zero Wing?" Everyone on the third floor turned towards Zero Wing's location at practically the same time, their hearts bursting with curiosity. Previously, none of the lightning strikes had hit anywhere near Zero Wing. Yet now Zero Wing received a violent bombardment. Most likely, even a great lord of the same level would be reduced to ashes after eating so many powerful lightning bolts. "What's that? A book? Could some kind of treasure have dropped?" Some of the players nearby quickly noticed the ancient tome hovering before Shifeng. Although they could not make out what kind of item the ancient tome was, judging by the huge commotion that heralded its appearance, they could easily guess that it was something extraordinary. The various first-rate guilds and top adventurer teams present revealed looks of envy and greed. As far as they knew, no fine gold or dark gold item would create such a huge commotion when it appeared. Hence, the tome should be epic rank at the very least. An epic item. At this stage of the game, although powerful guilds like first-rate guilds would already have around a dozen or so epic items in their possession, to the masses, epic items were still exceedingly rare. However, everyone also understood that stealing the tome from Zero Wing was impossible. Setting aside how powerful Zero Wing's team was, even reaching Zero Wing's location would be a massive challenge for them. What a powerful aura! Shifeng was indescribably shocked as he looked at the ancient tome in the air before him. He had seen the synthesis of many advanced combat technique tomes before. However, none of them had ever caused such a huge commotion. Moreover, even after the lightning flash tome completed its synthesis, it still radiated a faint aura that attracted mana to it, a situation that Shifeng had never encountered before. For a moment, he found it somewhat incredible that the book before him was a combat technique tome. "Guild leader, what is that item? Is it an epic tool?" Aqua Rose could not help but ask curiously. The other members of the team also held great curiosity about the lightning flash secret technique. Immediately, they pricked their ears up in hopes of catching wind of the tome's identity. As for the item's attribute panel, they held no expectations of catching a glimpse of it. Nowadays, Zero Wing was rife with spies of other guilds. Meanwhile, in regard to the epic items the guild possessed, they were generally considered a secret. After all, epic items served as the foundation of a guild. If used at a critical moment, they could achieve miraculous effects. Naturally, the guild wouldn't reveal such an important secret unless necessary. Hence, the members of the team did not hope to find out the exact details of the tome. They only wished to know what kind of item it was. "No." Shifeng shook his head. Smiling, he said, "This is a combat technique." "A combat technique?" Aqua Rose could not help but narrow her eyes at Shifeng skeptically. She suspected that Shifeng was simply messing around with her. What kind of combat technique could cause such a huge commotion? Even a secret technique tablet would not create such a commotion when it dropped. Shifeng's words stunned everyone. Although they refused to believe Shifeng, they all knew what kind of personality he had. He would never lie about something like this. Moreover, if he did not wish for them to know what the tome was, he could simply say that it was a guild's secret. In that case, they naturally would not pursue the matter. Yet, everyone also found it unbelievable that a combat technique could cause such a huge commotion. "Of course. Moreover, it isn't just any ordinary combat technique," Shifeng said, a hint of excitement in his voice. "This is a bronze combat technique with a complete legacy. Advanced combat techniques was something that countless expert players wished to learn. Even the various superpowers only possessed a few. In the past, advanced combat techniques had also been the strongest combat techniques Shifeng knew of. However, after finding out about secret technique tablets, in addition to the relevant information Phoenix Rain had provided him, he discovered the existence of combat techniques that were even stronger than advanced combat techniques. Bronze combat techniques. Normally, secret technique tablets were the only source of bronze combat techniques. Meanwhile, the power one could exhibit using such a technique was beyond imagination. Even Void Realm experts would have difficulty coping against a bronze combat technique. Shifeng had never expected to obtain a bronze combat technique on the 3rd floor of the Primordial Divine Ruin. Compared to a bronze tablet, a tome that recorded a complete bronze legacy technique was undoubtedly much better. Although a bronze tablet contained numerous bronze combat techniques, only 10 players could enter a bronze tablet each month, which meant that the guild could use it to nurture a mere handful of players. However, a combat technique tome did not possess such a restriction. As long as he willed it, he could let however many players learn from it as he wished. A bronze combat technique? Most of the Zero Wing members present revealed looks of confusion when they heard Shifeng's words. They did not understand what a bronze combat technique was at all. As for Aqua Rose and the others who had previously entered the legacy space for the secret spellcasting technique, they could not help but gape in shock. They knew what exactly a bronze combat technique represented, something much more powerful than an advanced combat technique. Only players like them, who had entered the bronze temple of a secret technique space, would know about bronze combat techniques. However, back then, they received only one learning opportunity for each floor they ascended in the bronze temple. Moreover, each floor became increasingly difficult to clear as they reached higher floors, which severely limited the number of learning opportunities they had. Now, however, they had a complete bronze combat technique tome. This meant that they could learn the combat technique recorded on it at any time, and without limit. Now that we have achieved our goal here, it's about time we headed down to the 4th floor, Shifeng said, chuckling. He then used the teleportation stones to send everyone to the 4th underground floor of the Primordial Divine Ruin. Zero Wing's team of 1,000+ players vanished from the Lightning Wasteland. Primordial Divine Ruin's 4th underground floor. The setting here was a quiet valley abounding with lush vegetation. A towering set of doors could be seen situated at the heart of the valley. Even if one stood at the summit of the mountains that formed the valley, one could still see this towering set of doors very clearly. Not only were the doors 100 meters in height, but they also sported plenty of divine runes carved on them. The doors radiated a powerful aura that would probably deter ordinary players from approaching them. At this moment, however, a flashy light show could be seen taking place before the massive stone doors. At the same time, sounds of explosions kept echoing throughout the entire valley. In the next moment, a 2-headed, 3-tailed earth dragon, which stood before the stone doors, could be seen letting out a deafening roar. Meanwhile, encircling this earth dragon was a team of 1,000+ experts. Currently, these expert players were attacking the monster in a frenzy, bombarding the 50-meter-tall earth dragon with one attack after another. However, despite the spectacular phenomena accompanying their attacks, the attacks themselves dealt only around -400 damage. From beginning to end, not a single attack inflicted over -1,000 damage to the monster. What a powerful monster! An archaic species? Or is it a ferocious beast? Zero Wing's members could not help but stare wide-eyed at the monster guarding the massive stone doors, their hearts filled with shock. Chapter 1662 Edgeless Blade. Chapter 1662 Edgeless Blade. An earth dragon? Shifeng could not help but be astonished as he looked at the 50-meter-tall monster standing inside the valley. Frost Flame 2-headed earth dragon, archaic species, inferior dragon, Grand Lord. Level 58. HP 270, 000/270, 000. Compared to other archaic species of similar rank and level, the Frost Flame 2-headed earth dragon was clearly stronger. Its HP already rivaled that of mythic monsters of the same level. It did not look like a Grand Lord at all. Moreover, aside from the Earth Dragon having superb defense, the battlefield it fought in was surrounded by pools of scorching lava. From time to time, jets of lava would shoot up and rain down on random locations of the battlefield. Even MTs would be able to endure a direct hit from the lava only 3 or 4 times. Should they successfully block the lava rain, the durability of their weapons and equipment would decrease significantly. In addition to the lava rain, the Earth Dragon itself attacked with its 3 tails and spewed out frost or flame breaths frequently. As a result, the expert players of the superpowers currently raiding the boss turned into streaks of light and disappeared from the battlefield one after another. In less than 10 minutes, the team made up of 1,000+ experts was annihilated. By the time the battle was over, the entire area before the massive stone doors had transformed into a world of flames and frost, the scene both mesmerizing and shocking. At this point, the spectating members of the various superpowers wore somber expressions on their faces as they looked at the Earth Dragon looming over them arrogantly before the stone doors. The Earth Dragon's defense and HP were both ridiculously high. In addition, players raiding the Earth Dragon had to keep an eye out for the lava that would rain down from the sky. However, after Shifeng and the others arrived inside the valley, the various superpowers all shifted their sights towards them. When these superpowers saw Shifeng's group moving past them, heading straight towards the Frost-Flame 2-headed Earth Dragon, none of them displayed any hostility. They simply watched quietly as Zero Wing's team approached the boss. Although there was only one boss on the entire 4th floor, they were not in a hurry to fight it at all. The reason for this was their confidence in the Earth Dragon's strength. The task of killing the Earth Dragon was no longer something a single superpower or large guild could achieve. Multiple superpowers would need to cooperate to deal with the boss. They couldn't possibly intend to take on the boss on their first visit, right? Wild Ocean could not help but laugh in ridicule when he saw Zero Wing's team showing signs of wanting to raid the Earth Dragon. The team that tried raiding the Earth Dragon just now consisted of the strongest experts of 2 superpowers. In the end, however, they were still no match for the boss. The Earth Dragon itself was already a massive challenge to players. The lava rain launched at random intervals from the surrounding lava pools only served to further increase the demands on players' combat standards. Meanwhile, the standard of Zero Wing's members was significantly inferior to that of the members of the various superpowers. Of course, it would be a different story if Zero Wing could replicate its feat on the 3rd floor and prevent the lava attacks from occurring entirely. However, how could such a thing happen time after time? It's better for us if they try. Once they realize where the difficulties of the raid lie, we'll have an easier time negotiating conditions for cooperation with them later on. Broken City said, chuckling nonchalantly. Though, I do wonder how much of the boss's HP Zero Wing will be able to shave off. Zero Wing was behaving similarly to how the Sacred Temple and Crimson Emperor had before. Although both guilds had known that the boss was not easy to deal with, as this was their first time raiding the Primordial Divine Ruin, they had felt that they should have no problem taking down the boss if they worked together. In the end, however, their combined forces got annihilated before they could even get the boss's HP below the 80% threshold. Now, the upper echelons of both guilds were wearing exceedingly ugly expressions on their faces. Even the combined forces of the Sacred Temple and Crimson Emperor managed to lower the boss's HP only to 81%. I'm guessing Zero Wing will have trouble taking away even 5% of the boss's HP. Just the first 2 lava showers will most likely wipe out over 80% of Zero Wing's members. With the remaining members, they would be fortunate if their overall DPS exceeds the boss's battle recovery. Praying Lotus said, shaking her head in disapproval as she looked at Zero Wing's team. Although Zero Wing's previous performances had indeed exceeded expectations, the guild's deficient foundation would be its downfall on this floor. Meanwhile, the other guilds present were sitting back, eagerly awaiting the start of the upcoming show. After all, as more teams fought the Earth Dragon, spectators like themselves would be able to uncover more of the Earth Dragon's secrets, which would, hopefully, eventually allow them to defeat the boss. Uncle Yuan, how far do you think Zero Wing will be able to go? Purple Jade asked curiously as she looked at Shifeng, who stood in the middle of Zero Wing's team. Other guilds might not have a clear idea of Zero Wing's strength, but the secret pavilion was well informed on matters regarding God's domain. They were quite aware that, when Phoenix Rain's Phoenix Pavilion and Zero Wing obtained the first clear of the Sunset Forest, Zero Wing had played an indispensable role in the raid. I'm not sure. Maybe they'll shave off around 20% of the boss's HP. Hopefully, they can get the boss to enter its second phase. That way, we can get a better understanding of the boss, Yuan Tianxin replied, shaking his head. Meanwhile, just as Yuan Tianxin and Purple Jade were conversing with each other, Zero Wing's members were also looking at and discussing the Earth Dragon. Guild leader, let's go! Kola urged excitedly as he looked at the distant Earth Dragon. Truthfully, dealing with the bosses on the third floor had not posed a challenge to him whatsoever. He had not been able to fully exhibit the Titan Guard's capabilities when going up against those bosses. Now that the Frost Flame two-headed Earth Dragon was before him, he was very eager to use it as a sparring partner to improve himself. Guild leader, why not let me be the lead MT this time? Turtledove eagerly recommended herself. At this moment, Kola and the other MTs weren't the only ones itching for action. Fire Dance, Shadow Sword, and the other DPS of the team were also bursting with fighting spirit. As long as Shifeng gave the command, they would immediately charge at the Earth Dragon without hesitation. Hold on a moment. Shadow, take this weapon and use it for this raid, Shifeng said after pondering for some time. He then took out the Tier 3 mana weapon Edgeless blade from his bag and handed it over to Shadow Sword. Initially, Shadow Sword wanted to say that the Crimson Moon Great Sword he wielded was already plenty good, and that there was no need to switch weapons. However, after he accepted the Edgeless blade, he fell into a daze. Although he had yet to equip the weapon, the instant he took it into his hands, he could feel immense power surging into his body. At the same time, his mind also gained greater clarity. Shadow Sword immediately inspected the attributes of the Edgeless blade. What is this weapon? Shadow Sword muttered blankly as he looked at the Edgeless blade's attribute panel. Crimson Moon was one of Titan City's 31 holy weapons. At this point, he had already upgraded the weapon to Dark Gold rank, and its attributes were significantly superior to even ordinary Dark Gold weapons. In the future, he could even raise it to Epic rank. However, compared to the Edgeless blade he was currently holding, Crimson Moon was no different from an iron rod. He found it truly hard to imagine that such a powerful weapon could exist at this stage of the game. Moreover, even if he eventually upgraded Crimson Moon to Epic rank, he did not think that it would be a match for the Edgeless blade. The reason for this evaluation was the sensation he got when he held the Edgeless blade. It felt as if he had just activated a berserk skill. Just equipping the weapon had increased his strength by 40%. Moreover, the Edgeless blade's attack power was directly correlated to his strength attribute. Overall, the Edgeless blade's attack power was 50% higher than Crimson Moon's. In response to Shadow Sword's reaction, Shifeng dispensed with explanations. He commanded through the team chat. Alright, everyone get ready! Kola, Turtledove, and Yi Wumian will be responsible for tanking the boss. Everyone else, pay attention to your positioning. Make sure not to stand near the Earth Dragon's heads and tails. If nobody has any problem, let's begin. As soon as Shifeng was done speaking, Zero Wing's members charged into the Frost Flame two-headed Earth Dragon's sphere of influence like a frenzied mob. Chapter 1663 Tier 3 Power. Chapter 1663 Tier 3 Power. Chapter 1663 Tier 3 Power. The Frost Flame two-headed Earth Dragon laid before the massive stone doors with all of its eyes shut. As the Earth Dragon breathed, the area before its heads turned into a hell of frost and fire. When Kola, Turtledove, and Yi Wumian got within 300 yards of the Earth Dragon, it stirred. When its two sets of amber eyes fell on the MT trio, it released a deafening roar that echoed throughout the valley. A horrific pressure washed over Zero Wing's approaching members, instilling a sense of dread and turning their movements sluggish. Ha! They're really doing it! And they're charging in as one mindlessly instead of sending a few experts to test the waters. What a bunch of brave fools! Wild Ocean laughed when he saw the ugly expressions that Zero Wing's members wore. He knew just how powerful the Earth Dragon was. After all, he had already fought the boss more than once. One could only understand the Earth Dragon's strength if they had experienced it personally. From what he had learned, he knew that ordinary Grand Lord ranked archaic species couldn't compare to this Earth Dragon. The boss had even easily overwhelmed a Tier 2 shield warrior like himself. Although the Earth Dragon seemed like a single entity, it should actually be treated as an amalgamation of three. This was because its two heads were capable of acting independently. Although all three tails normally moved in unison, they moved as though they had minds of their own. They could sense and attack targets that the two heads couldn't see. The Earth Dragon also possessed tremendous strength. Even when it was suppressed by a magic array, a single attack forced a Tier 2 metric tons to retreat several steps and take over -20,000 damage. This was after he had executed a technique to deflect most of the attack's power. If he simply blocked the Earth Dragon's attacks normally, he would take over -30,000 damage from its normal attacks. If he were careless for even a moment, the Earth Dragon would kill him instantly. Even without the constant threat of the lava showers, the Earth Dragon was a daunting foe. The Frost Flame two-headed Earth Dragon was the absolute gatekeeper for the Primordial Divine Ruins' 5th underground floor. Along with the Earth Dragon's roars, lava began to spew from the ground, creating a wall of lava around the battlefield. The ring of lava that formed sealed off Zero Wing's path of retreat. Now, it wasn't possible for players inside to escape or enter the battlefield. Players wouldn't have any opportunities to attack in rotation. Only the victor would survive this lava-surrounded battlefield. As the lava barrier formed, the Earth Dragon's two mouths widened. The ice and fire-type mana in the environment began to surge towards the beast's maws. Zero Wing really is unlucky. The Earth Dragon is actually using Frost Flame Breath right off the bat. The battle is likely already over. Praying Lotus sighed, watching the scene from afar. Frost Flame Breath was one of the Earth Dragon's team wipe moves. Not only did the skill possess a massive AoE, but it had an extremely short channeling time. As a cone attack skill, players normally wouldn't have trouble dodging it if they were within 50 yards of the boss. However, Zero Wing's members were still over 100 yards away from the boss. In this case, they would have to cross greater distances to move out of the skill's AoE, which was impossible with so little time. Praying Lotus wasn't alone in her thinking. Everyone could already imagine the boss wiping out Zero Wing's team before they could land a single attack. Seal! Just as the Earth Dragon was about to complete its Frost Flame Breath, Sherfone raised his right hand, which wore the 7 Luminaries ring, and cast Forbidden Domain on the Guardian boss. Suddenly, the mana in a 600-yard radius around the Earth Dragon froze. The mana surging towards the Earth Dragon's heads also stopped. In turn, the magic arrays, which Frost Flame Breath had formed, began to crumble due to a lack of mana. What a powerful silencing effect! Zero Wing has such a powerful silencing skill! The distant spectators gasped. None of them could believe that a player was actually capable of stopping the Earth Dragon's Frost Flame Breath as it activated. God's Domain might have many players who had learned silencing skills, but there were differences in these skills' strength. Normally, silencing skills would have striking effects against Tier 0 and Tier 1 players, but most of the silencing skills they've seen thus far had little effect on Tier 2 players, much less boss monsters. Silencing skills that could affect boss monsters were incomparably valuable, even more so than large-scale destruction spells. Being able to silence a boss even for a moment could save a team from instant annihilation and turn the tide of battle, and most superpowers would offer astronomical prices to purchase such skills. According to their knowledge, aside from Tier 3 silencing magic scrolls, there had yet to be a player that had learned a silencing skill capable of affecting a Grand Lord-ranked boss. Even silencing skills that could affect Great Lords had yet to be discovered, but Zero Wing actually possessed one. Zero Wing's value rose even higher in the various spectating superpowers' eyes. At the very least, Zero Wing now possessed an advantage none of them had against the Frost Flame two-headed Earth Dragon. With this silencing skill, raiding the Earth Dragon would be considerably easier. After being silenced, the Earth Dragon became enraged. Letting out a powerful roar, it charged towards Shifeng. Having expected such a reaction, Shifeng leisurely commanded, "Kola, you three will intercept the boss. Guild leader, leave it to us." Kola and the others smiled as they moved to meet the boss in battle. To the Earth Dragon, the MT trio was little more than a group of ants. The Earth Dragon lifted one of its claws and swept it horizontally at the approaching pests. "Come!" Seeing the massive claw approach, Kola's lips curled into a grin. He then raised his shield and charged forward. Pun! When the Earth Dragon's massive claw swept across the uneven ground, it removed all obstacles without slowing in the slightest, yet when its claw collided with Kola's Titan guard, its speed sharply decreased. The claw completely stopped after another 10 yards or so. What strength! Kola was surprised when he blocked the Earth Dragon's claw. This claw swipe had taken nearly 40,000 of his HP. The Earth Dragon's strength was already close to rivaling an ordinary mythic monster of the same level. The onlooking superpowers were even more shocked. If the Earth Dragon were unsuppressed, a single attack would be enough to instant-kill a Tier 1 metric ton, while Tier 2 MTs would lose over 50,000 HP. Meanwhile, their Tier 2 MTs only had a little over 60,000 HP. 2 hits would be more than enough to kill a Tier 2 metric tons, yet even after receiving the Earth Dragon's attack head-on, Kola still had over half of his HP remaining. This proved that, at the very least, Kola could tank 3 of the unsuppressed Frost Flame 2-headed Earth Dragon's hits. This also meant that, even if the Earth Dragon weren't subjected to any form of suppression, Kola could tank the Earth Dragon head-on if they healed him enough. This, in turn, gave his team the foundation it needed to raid the Earth Dragon. With an MT like Kola, their chances of defeating the Earth Dragon increased by at least 20%. Seeing the ant survive its first attack, the Earth Dragon proceeded to swipe its other claw. This time, Turtledove received the attack. Pun! Once again, something unbelievable occurred. The boss pushed Turtledove a much shorter distance than Kola. She also only lost a little over 34,000 HP. Likewise, she still had over 50% of her HP. Immediately after the Earth Dragon's 2 consecutive attacks, Shadow Sword, who was only a short distance behind Kola and Turtledove, leaped into the air and slashed at the Earth Dragon's chest. After the flash of silver, the Earth Dragon's head screamed in agony. Shadow Sword's greatsword had actually cut through the Earth Dragon's adamantine-like scales, leaving a bloody gash on the monster's chest. Minus 10,320. An unbelievable number had appeared above the Frost Flame 2-headed Earth Dragon's heads. Chapter 1664 Frightening Team. Chapter 1664 Frightening Team. Over 10,000 damage? How is that possible? I'm not seeing things right? How is his damage so high? Is he wearing a full set of epic equipment? The crowd couldn't tear their eyes off of Shadow Sword, shock and curiosity overwhelming their minds. In fact, many of them wanted to rush over and demand to know what Zero Wing had done to allow a player to deal over minus 10,000 damage to the Frost Flame 2-headed Earth Dragon. The majority of their members' attacks had only dealt damage in the hundreds. Only their Tier 2 players had dealt more than that thanks to their superior attributes. Even so, their normal attacks only dealt around minus 3,000 damage each, yet Shadow Sword had dealt over minus 10,000 with a normal attack. Even if Shadow Sword were a Tier 2 Berserker, there should be no way his damage should surpass their Tier 2 members by such a large margin. The only reason they could think of was that the Berserker must have a full set of epic equipment, but even then, such a thing was unrealistic. How valuable was epic equipment? Players would need over 10 pieces to be fully geared in epic ranked equipment. Most of God's Domain's large guilds didn't even have that many pieces. Even super guilds could only afford to equip their strongest members with 4 or 5 pieces for maximum efficiency. They refused to believe that Zero Wing had the capability, or generosity to gear a single player in 10 or more pieces of epic equipment. Guild leader, what kind of weapon did you give Shadow? Its attack power is amazing. Aqua Rose and Zero Wing's other Tier 2 players could not help but ask Shifeng after seeing Shadow Sword's shocking damage. They knew very clearly what kind of equipment Shadow Sword wore, and they knew that none of them could deal over minus 10,000 damage to this Guardian boss, especially not with a normal attack. The only explanation for Shadow Sword's unexpected performance had to be the weapon Shifeng had given him before the raid. However, they found it hard to imagine that changing weapons would offer such a massive boost. Even if the Great Sword were an epic weapon, the Berserker shouldn't be capable of so much damage. After all, the various superpowers had armed their Tier 2 DPS experts with epic weapons as well. I never said that I had given Shadow the weapon. I'm only letting him use it. As for what kind of weapon it is, that is a guild secret, Shifeng said, revealing a meaningful smile. If any of you enter the flowing water realm in the future, I can help you obtain this kind of power, too. Truthfully, the Edgeless Blade's performance had even surprised Shifeng. He had never thought that a Tier 3 mana weapon would be so powerful. However, as mana weapons had yet to make their public appearance in God's domain, he did not want too many people to learn about them. If not for the Earth Dragon's incredibly high defense, he wouldn't have let Shadow Sword use the Edgeless Blade. Seriously, guild leader? Flying Shadow and the others' eyes sparkled when they heard Shifeng's offer. They all wanted to wield the power Shadow Sword had just displayed. Of course. When have I ever lied to you? Shifeng said, shrugging. Although Tier 3 mana weapons were extremely rare, even rarer than epic weapons, there were 12 Tier 3 mana weapons sitting in the Lost Town's tower. If he could secure the Lost Town, those weapons would be his for the taking. Hearing Shifeng's assurance, everyone's enthusiasm to improve their combat standard soared. If they raised their combat power to the flowing water realm and obtained a weapon like the Edgeless Blade, they would instantly become apex experts in God's domain. They wouldn't even have a problem killing a peak expert of the same level. Just thinking of the possibility excited them. The team began to vent its newfound passion in its fight against the Earth Dragon as damages in the hundreds began to appear above the boss's head. Only the Magic Light team and Zero Wings Tier 2 players dealt over minus 3,000 damage, with some even reaching minus 5,000 damage. When Shifeng and Fire Dance joined the fray, the spectators were shocked once more. Due to the benefits formed the Shadow Bloodline, each of Fire Dance's normal attacks dealt over minus 9,000 damage. Although she didn't deal as much as Shadow Sword, she was an assassin. Her specialty was speed rather than raw power. Naturally, Shifeng was more impressive than both Shadow Sword and Fire Dance. His attack power was on a whole other level. His normal attacks alone dealt over minus 12,000 damage, while his skills easily dealt between minus 30,000 to minus 50,000 damage. He was practically a humanoid great lord. As they attacked, Shifeng sent 9 magical class players to approach the Earth Dragon and used the 9-star Polar Domain magic array to suppress the boss. Although the Earth Dragon had extraordinary strength, at the end of the day, it was only a Grand Lord. Its resistance wasn't on par with mythic monsters. Hence, the intermediate magic array still suppressed the Earth Dragon's attributes by 15%. Following which, Shifeng spent 5,000 magic crystals to activate World Projection, suppressing the boss even further. This caused the Earth Dragon's basic attributes to fall to 70% of their original values. Its maximum HP decreased to 189 million as well. Shifeng had no intention of using Disintegration Field as the skill didn't differentiate friend from foe. Aside from himself, everyone within range would be subjected to the Disintegration Field's suppression. Right now, his team had to attack while focusing on their positioning and the lower showers. If he used Disintegration Field, the Earth Dragon wouldn't be the one to suffer, Zero Wings members would. Fortunately, the 30% decrease to the Earth Dragon's basic attributes relieved some of the pressure on Kola and the other 2 MTs. Even when they didn't use special techniques to block the boss's normal attacks, they received less than minus 20,000 from each hit. This damage wasn't nearly enough to threaten their lives. To increase the team's overall DPS, Shifeng had ordered some of the weaker experts to activate their berserk skills instead of holding back. Suddenly, the Earth Dragon's HP began to fall, the speed of which shocked the watching superpowers. However, as the battle drug on, the surrounding barrier began to spew jets of lava into the sky. The lava then rained down on everyone on the battlefield. Not even Shifeng had a good solution for countering this massive AoE. He could only rely on Violet Cloud's holy prayer, reducing the damage his teammates took while simultaneously healing them. As for Kola, he used Divine Shield to protect the MTs fighting on the front line. When the lava shower ended, even with Violet Cloud's assistance, Zero Wing's team had lost over 100 members. Zero Wing's casualty rate was significantly higher than the various superpowers teams. Fortunately, the lava showers did not happen too often, giving Zero Wing's members plenty of time to damage the boss. When the second lava shower eventually fell on the team, Zero Wings suffered evidently fewer losses. Most of the players that had died during the first lava shower had lower combat standards, while the survivors were stronger. The Earth Dragon's HP quickly fell to 95%. 95%. 90%. 80%. When the Earth Dragon entered its second phase, it ceased its claw attacks. Instead, it began to execute AoE breath attacks, though they weren't as powerful as its Frost Flame breath. Even so, each attack dealt considerable amounts of damage. When Kola tried to take a hit with his shield, he had instantly lost over 30,000 HP. The change in attack pattern also forced Zero Wing's members to run constantly, evading the boss's AoE attacks. This development instantly reduced the team's overall DPS. However, Shifeng still had the situation in hand. Roughly 6 minutes after the battle had begun, the Earth Dragon's HP fell to 30%. At this point, Zero Wing's team only had 300 members left alive. Everyone else had either died to the breath attacks or the lava showers. The boss is entering its third phase. Whoever has a berserk skill, use it now! Shifeng hurriedly shouted when he saw the Earth Dragon's HP fall to 30%. Hearing Shifeng's command, Kola and the other MTs activated Power of Darkness, no longer holding back and skyrocketing their attributes. Meanwhile, the Frost Flame two-headed Earth Dragon released a deafening roar, and the surrounding ice and fire-type mana concentrated around it. The Earth Dragon swiped one of its claws at Kola, Turtledove, and Yi Wumien. Despite the boost to the MT trio's basic attributes, the attack shoved them back by over a dozen yards. They had nearly lost their footing from the devastating impact. Each of them had lost over 50,000 HP on the spot. Had they failed to activate their berserk skills in time, they would have died instantly. Quick! The boss's defense has weakened! Attack it with everything you've got! When Shifeng realized that the Earth Dragon had entered its berserk and saw that his attacks now dealt over -16,000 damage, he ordered his team to go all out. With the decrease to the boss's defense, Shifeng stopped holding back himself as he activated Heavenly Dragon's power. All of a sudden, the Earth Dragon's HP began to fall much faster. Meanwhile, the less HP the Earth Dragon had remaining, the stronger its retaliation became. From time to time, it randomly targeted a player with its tails and breaths. Although Kola and the others continued to use taunt skills to hold the boss's aggro, all their efforts were futile. 25%. 15%. 5%. When the Earth Dragon only had 3% HP remaining, fewer than 100 Zero Wing members stood on the battlefield. The situation looked dire for Zero Wing. Meanwhile, the Earth Dragon used its breath and claw attacks more often, forcing the MT trio to activate their life-saving skills and focus on defense. They no longer dared to spare energy to deal damage. Die! Shifeng activated Divine Providence as he charged up to the Earth Dragon. He then activated the Tier 2 Flame Burst and brandished his swords at the Grand Lord. Dazzling sword lights illuminated the battlefield. Every time these lights flashed, a scorch mark would appear on the Earth Dragon's body. Out of the 16 slashes Shifeng had executed, the weakest had dealt over -200,000 damage. In the blink of an eye, he had eliminated the final strand of the boss's HP. The Frost Flame two-headed Earth Dragon then unwillingly collapsed to the burned earth. Chapter 1665 Everyone's Target. Chapter 1665 Everyone's Target. Chapter 1665 Everyone's Target. When the frost-flamed two-headed Earth Dragon collapsed, the ground shook under its massive weight, and the 50-plus survivors nearly lost their footing as the earth trembled. Everyone, Zero Wing's members and those from the various superpowers behind the lava barrier, fell silent as they turned towards Shurfeng, who stood before the Earth Dragon's corpse. The Grand Lord's blood had dyed Shurfeng's armor, which was damaged in multiple places. The swordsman was visibly exhausted, yet despite that, he seemed massive in the spectators' eyes. Every player watching felt as if they gazed upon a hero of legend. "It's dead! Zero Wing actually slew the Earth Dragon. This is a trick, right? They actually managed to defeat the boss." No one could bring themselves to believe their eyes. Even the superpowers had been utterly helpless against the Earth Dragon on their own. They likely would have had to pull their forces to defeat the boss, yet Zero Wing's team had accomplished the feat on its own. Immediately, the sound of a system notification reached everyone's ears. "System, congratulations to Team Zero Wing for being the first to kill the Frost-Flame two-headed Earth Dragon. Rewarding 3 fifth-floor teleportation stones and 10 humanity reputation points." With this system notification, even those who refused to believe that Zero Wing had succeeded had no choice but to accept it as fact. Is this why Phoenix Rain has such great faith in Zero Wing? Yuan Tianxin fell into deep thought as he stared at Shurfeng's back. "Zero Wing, huh?" King's Return's Broken City could not help but watch Shurfeng closely as well. The guild is actually far more powerful than the rumors made it out to be. It seems that our subordinates will have to pay much closer attention to the guild. Suddenly, the various superpowers' attitudes towards Zero Wing changed. Now, rather than treat Zero Wing like some insignificant power, they had to view the guild as a competitor. Meanwhile, Shurfeng remained ignorant of the attention he received from the various superpowers. He only had eyes for the items that had dropped before him. Normally, a team would be incredibly lucky if a Grand Lord ranked archaic species dropped several dozen items, yet the Earth Dragon had dropped over 100. The size of the bounty had far exceeded Shurfeng's expectations. Seeing this, the spectating superpowers' eyes became bloodshot. In fact, many of them wanted to charge forward and steal the loot. Needless to say, the first kill of such a powerful archaic species would definitely grant extremely bountiful loot. Such loot could elevate their respective teams' strength to a whole new level. Unfortunately, none of them could act on their desires with the lava barrier between them and the items. They could only watch helplessly as Shurfeng collected one item after another. Meanwhile, Shurfeng went into a frenzy, snatching up every item. At the same time, he instructed the team's healers to resurrect their dead. Although the lava barrier stood between them and the various superpowers, it had begun to fade after the Earth Dragon's death. At the rate it disappeared, the barrier would only last a few more minutes. Meanwhile, the rule for boss loot in the outside world also applied in the Primordial Divine Ruin. Even if players successfully killed a boss and obtained its loot, the items would drop if other players killed them within the first 2 hours. There were multiple teams from the various superpowers waiting outside of the lava barrier, and their experts weren't ordinary. If all of these experts attacked, they could very easily annihilate Zero Wing's players. Hence, he needed to collect the loot and leave before the barrier vanished. Zero Wing's members quickly realized their situation, and the team's healers rushed to resurrect their fallen companions. Sure enough, the lava barrier completely disappeared around 4 minutes after the Earth Dragon's death. But before the various superpowers could take action, Shurfeng used the 8 teleportation stones, 5 from the boss and 3 from the system reward. Instantly, Zero Wing's 800 living members transformed into streaks of light that faded into the massive stone doors. They sure ran quickly. Wild Ocean was slightly disappointed to see Zero Wing's members vanish. A colossal fortune had just disappeared before his very eyes. If not for the lava barrier, Zero Wing wouldn't have gotten away with the boss's loot. As expected of Zero Wing, they certainly react quickly. Yuan Tianxin chuckled. Everyone dreamed of obtaining items that could improve players' strength, and superpowers were no exception. Even though Zero Wing had proven to them all that its combat power and growth potential was extraordinary, that would do little to deter them from attacking. Uncle Yuan, what should we do? With the boss dead, we won't be able to move on to the 5th floor, Purple Jade said. She felt a slight headache brew as she gazed at the empty battlefield. Although the 4th underground floor had plenty of monsters, only the Frost Flame 2-headed Earth Dragon dropped teleportation stones. Since the only Earth Dragon on the 4th floor had just died, other players had no way of proceeding to the next floor. Don't worry. The Earth Dragon is both the Guardian Boss and the only monster that drops the teleportation stones. It should respawn shortly. However, even if we kill it, we won't get as much loot as Zero Wing, Yuan Tiexin said, a hint of envy flashing in his eyes as he stared at the massive set of stone doors, which Zero Wing's members had disappeared into. News that Zero Wing had secured the first kill of the 4th floor's Guardian Boss quickly spread past the Primordial Divine Ruin, causing a commotion among the powers interested in the Orc Empire. Nobody had expected that the first guild to set foot on the Primordial Divine Ruin's 5th underground floor would either be a super first-rate guild or a super guild, but an up-and-coming guild like Zero Wing. For a time, a significant number of guilds and adventurer teams became interested in cooperating with the guild. Although they weren't strong enough to reach the 5th floor and subsequently Primordial City on their own, they could hire Zero Wing to carry some of their members. They might be able to learn all sorts of combat techniques from the guild, as well. As for purchasing these services from the various superpowers, they had no hope of such a thing. They had nothing the various superpowers wanted, but Zero Wing was a different story. Zero Wing was a guild with very shallow foundations. It lacked both manpower and resources. Moreover, as a developing guild, Zero Wing definitely needed a large amount of funds and resources, which their guilds and adventurer teams could provide. With this, they would have the basis for cooperation. Meanwhile, on the Primordial Divine Ruin's 5th underground floor. After leaving the 4th floor, Shifeng's group was transported to a quiet lakeside surrounded by forest. So, this is the 5th floor? Everyone turned as they observed their surroundings. Unlike on the previous floors, they didn't feel danger from the area around them. On the contrary, they felt comfortable and at peace. Everyone, rest up. We'll search for the path to Primordial City later, Shifeng instructed as he noticed his recently resurrected team members' exhaustion. Every 5th floor in the Primordial Divine Ruin was a milestone. The 1st floor would test players, while the 5th would allow them to rest. The 5th floor's mana density was so high that players could swiftly recover their stamina and concentration even as they moved about. The recovery effects on this floor were no weaker than those in NPC cities' hotels. In the past, some guilds had even established temporary towns on the Primordial Divine Ruins' rest floors. These temporary towns had provided a safe haven from other players and a place for players to trade and replenish their supplies. Unfortunately, the services these towns had provided had been exceedingly expensive. But that couldn't be helped. Once players left the Primordial Divine Ruin, not only would they have to start over with the 1st floor's raid, but they'd also have to wait a full day before entering again. Just re-entering the ruin would be a problem. If a team wanted to resupply inside the ruin, they had to accept the atrocious prices. Hence, the temporary guild towns on the ruin's rest floors generated considerable profit each day. Moreover, the services would become more expensive as the floor numbers increased. However, only superpowers were generally capable of establishing towns on lower floors. Ordinary large guilds could only make a profit by doing so on the 5th floor. Only, Shifeng currently had no such plans. Locating the path towards Primordial City was far more important right now. While everyone rested, Shifeng opened his bag and looked through the items the Frost Flame 2-headed Earth Dragon had dropped. Since he had been in too much of a rush earlier, he hadn't had the time to inspect the boss's loot, but even if the other guilds wanted to chase his team to the 5th floor, they'd have to wait until a new Earth Dragon spawned on the 4th to do so. Chapter 1666 Insane Loot. Chapter 1666 Insane Loot. Chapter 1666 Insane Loot. The Frost Flame 2-headed Earth Dragon had dropped over 100 items. Although the majority consisted of materials and magic crystals, 8 weapons and pieces of equipment had dropped. The reward for first kill is quite surprising. Sherfone could not help but grow a little excited after appraising the weapons and equipment. Out of the 8 weapons and equipment, there were 5 pieces of level 50 dark gold equipment, and 2 level 50 dark gold weapons, one of which was a dagger, and the other was a one-handed axe. The weapons were top tier even among dark gold weapons, good enough to tempt super guilds' peak experts. Although the various large guilds' experts had already reached level 50, most of them were stuck with level 45 weapons. Take the various superpowers that had entered the Primordial Divine Ruin alongside Zero Wing, for example. Those superpowers refinement realm experts would be fortunate to wield a level 50 fine gold weapon. Unfortunately, most were stuck with level 45 dark gold weapons, which had both lower basic attributes and attack power than level 50 fine gold weapons. Surprisingly, the 5 pieces of dark gold equipment that had dropped were pieces of the Berserker class's Mad Gale set and the Elementalist class's Frost Flame set. 2 of the 5 pieces were the Mad Gale set's gloves and boots, and the remaining 3 pieces were the Frost Flame's hat, gloves, and boots. Level 50 dark gold set equipment was only inferior to epic equipment. Players could use the equipment until they were level 59 before it would go out of date. Moreover, class-specific set equipment was generally specialized for its class. Take the 6-piece Mad Gale set, for example. Its 2-piece set effect increased the wearer's movement speed and attack speed by 15%, which made up for the Berserker class's lack of speed. The Frost Flame set was also a 6-piece set, and its 2-piece set effect increased Elementalist C-cast range by 10%. Although the improvement seemed small, a player could easily overwhelm ranged opponents if they took advantage of it properly. If he could complete both sets, he could even fetch 10,000 for them. However, the 7 items were nothing compared to the value of the last piece of equipment. Frost Flame Ring, Epic Rank. Level 50, Level 100. Equipment requirement, Strength 500, Agility 400, Intelligence 1000. Strength plus 55, Agility plus 42, Endurance plus 45, Intelligence plus 74, Level 50. Ignore levels plus 12. Ice resistance plus 15. Fire resistance plus 15. Additional passive skill dash. Frost Flame Barrier creates a frost flame barrier around user. As long as the user is standing, the power of all ice and fire type spells increases by 20% and channeling time reduces by 10%. Additional active skill 1 dash. Frost Flame's Descent. Manipulate ice and fire type mana to deal 700% fire damage to targets in a 40-yard cone. Targets hit will have their movement speed reduced by 70% for 6 seconds. Cooldown 3 minutes. Additional active skill 2 dash. Frost Flame Shield creates a protective shield that covers an area with a 15-yard radius. The Frost Flame Shield is immune to all ice and fire type damage. The Frost Flame Shield lasts 20 seconds and can absorb damage equivalent to 300% of user's maximum mana. Cooldown 10 minutes. Rings and necklaces were extremely rare equipment in God's domain. They were worth at least double that of equipment of the same quality, as well. An epic ring was far more valuable than a piece of epic equipment. If an elementalist equipped the Frost Flame Ring, their combat power would increase by at least 20%. Moreover, the Frost Flame Ring offered skills that covered both AoE offense and defense. It was a treasure worth tens of thousands of gold. Guild leader, what did the boss drop? Blackie could not help but ask curiously as he watched Sherfone inspect the Earth Dragon's loot. At Blackie's question, the rest of the team members perked up, curious about the loot as well. Take a look for yourselves, Sherfone said. He then shared the 8 weapons and pieces of equipment's attribute panels in the team chat, allowing everyone to see the items. I've also listed the GCPs needed to purchase them. If you're interested in any of them, come to me. Although epic items were precious in God's domain, they were no longer unattainable. Hence, it didn't particularly matter if he revealed the Frost Flame Ring. At most, the various major powers would envy Zero Wing when they found out about it. They would not go as far as to wage war over the item. Moreover, by sharing the attribute panels with the team, he could improve the team's morale. These level 50 dark gold weapons and equipment pieces are amazing. The boss's loot is insane. It actually dropped level 50 dark gold set equipment. This ring is godlike. Its attributes alone can rival the attributes on my level 50 fine gold gloves. Screw the basic attributes. Look at the ring's additional skills. Those effects are amazing. If I had this ring, my DPS would increase by at least 30%. Everyone drooled over the 8 items. Any one of these items would easily rank among a super guild's most precious treasures. Not even super guilds' upper echelons wielded such items, yet Shifeng had made them available for purchase in the Zero Wing. The only problem was the items' price tags. Each one of the 2 level 50 dark gold weapons cost 500,000 GCP, which was the equivalent of 1,000 gold outside of the guild. Although it was incredibly cheap if purchased with coins, it was a different story if players purchased them with GCPs. GCPs were, after all, far more difficult to acquire. The Frost Flame Ring, however, cost 4 million GCPs, the equivalent of 8,000 gold. At this point, no one in the guild had that many GCPs. However, since Shifeng didn't want the ring to go to waste, he lent it to Alluring Summer, who was a Tier 2 elementalist. I'm definitely not going to face Summer in PvP. The Frost Flame Ring skills are game-breaking, Cola said as he watched Alluring Summer equip the Frost Flame Ring. As a Tier 2 elementalist, Alluring Summer was already a mobile defense turret. If she focused on a single target, even a Tier 2 metric tons of the same level would fall quickly under her attacks. With the assistance of the Frost Flame Ring, Alluring Summer's firepower would rise to a whole new level. If she activated Frost Flame Shield, she would be able to cast her spells without worrying about incoming attacks for a short time. She could afford to cast powerful spells that had long channeling times even in a one-on-one fight. After dealing with the weapons and equipment, Shifeng didn't share any information on the other items the Earth Dragon had dropped. Weapons and equipment would only boost the strength of an individual player, but it was a different story for the 2 forging designs the Guardian boss had dropped. One of the forging designs was for the Giant Frost Axe, a level 50 fine gold 2-handed axe, while the other was for the Scorching Sun Gloves, a set of level 50 dark gold plate gloves. If he allowed Cream Cocoa and the others to learn these designs, they could craft plenty of powerful weapons and equipment pieces for the guild. The 2 designs were exceedingly more valuable than the 7 dark gold items combined. Shifeng had also obtained a leaf of tattered parchment from the Earth Dragon. Although the words and images on the parchment had long since become indiscernible, it still radiated a faint trace of pressure. When Shifeng felt this pressure, he was shocked. After taking a closer look at this parchment, Shifeng was elated. The parchment was actually a Heroes chapter. Moreover, unlike the Heroes chapter he had obtained during a previous auction, this Heroes chapter contained information on a particular hero, and would summon said hero when used. It was even more valuable than a Heroes chapter that summoned a random hero. The name of the hero recorded was also one that Shifeng was extremely familiar with. It was also a name that everybody in God's domain had known during his previous life, the Magic King, Craig Midlands. Chapter 1667 Magic King. Chapter 1667 Magic King. The fact that the Earth Dragon had dropped a Heroes chapter, let alone a Hero chapter for Craig Midlands, had truly surprised Shifeng. In God's domain, there were 32 heroes that could only be summoned with specific Heroes chapters. They were also the strongest Heroes players could summon using the Heroes chapters. In the past, these 32 heroes had been known as the 32 Pillars. Based on historical records, every one of these 32 heroes had cleared the complete God's trial and gained the ancient God's recognition. If nurtured properly, any one of these 32 pillars could easily become the guardian of an entire city. This was because these 32 heroes had the potential to reach level 200, Tier 5 at the very minimum. Moreover, because they were heroes, their basic attributes were higher than players of the same level and tier. When players nurtured these heroes to their peaks, only Tier 6 God-ranked players had any chance against them. Among the 32 pillars, the Magic King, Craig Midlands, ranked 17th. He had been a famous NPC in God's domain who had mastered the 6 major elements. No ordinary Tier 5 NPC could compare to his strength. Craig Midlands had once fended off a siege that included 20 Tier 5 players and successfully protected the city he had been tasked to guard. He had even killed 11 of the Tier 5 experts. The hero's display had been so impressive that it had even stupefied the guild that had nurtured and summoned him. Nobody had expected the Magic King to be that powerful. Normally, even a Tier 5 NPC would fall if 20 Tier 5 players ganged up on him, yet the Magic King had resisted and won. However, Craig's victory over the team of Tier 5 players was not what that shocked the world the most. Rather, players had been astounded by the spells he had used. With his mastery over 6 major elements, not only did his attacks carry great destructive power, but his attack methods were also varied and complex. His attacks had basically no weaknesses. If a Tier 5 player had tried to face him one-on-one, they would have been beaten to a pulp. Moreover, for every element Craig Midlands grasped, he could create one elemental doppelganger. Although each doppelganger only had 80% of Craig's attributes, they were far stronger than players of the same level and tier. In other words, trying to fight Craig Midlands was on par with fighting 7 Tier 5 NPCs. With this, I'll have a capable protector for Zero Wing City. Sherphone clearly remembered that the guild that had acquired the Magic King, Craig Midlands, in his previous life had only been a first-rate guild. Naturally, the guild had used Craig to protect its main city, and due to the NPC's presence, not even super first-rate and super guilds had dared to strike that city. If he used Craig to protect Zero Wing City, the city's defensibility would rise to an entirely new level. Shortly after Sherphone and the other Zero Wing members began their rest on the 5th floor, Melancholic Smile contacted him. "Guild leader, what did you do in the Primordial Divine Ruin? Many large guilds have come to Candlelight to negotiate cooperation." Melancholic Smile asked inquisitively. As many as 8 first-rate guilds had approached Candlelight, seeking cooperation, not to mention the 2nd and 3rd-rate guilds. Watching these guilds' upper echelons enter White River City's Candlelight trading firm with their entourages has been spectacular. The scene had also caused a huge commotion throughout the city. For a moment, she had even thought that these guilds had intended to attack the trading firm. "It's nothing. We just got to the ruins' 5th floor before the other guilds," Sherphone said, chuckling. "What kind of cooperation are they looking for?" "They're asking to purchase some of our guild's basic combat techniques and opportunities to learn advanced combat techniques. Those slots to enter Primordial City are their main goal. They are willing to pay with magic crystals and top-tier weapons and equipment," Melancholic Smile said. The bounty war between Zero Wing and Heaven's Burial was still in full swing. As a result, Zero Wing burned through funds, weapons, and equipment each day. If Zero Wing could sell the services these large guilds requested for top-tier weapons and equipment, it would help the guild out a great deal. Unfortunately, this matter would have a massive impact on the guild, and she couldn't make the decision by herself. Their ideas sound quite solid. Sherphone began to ruminate on the matter. A moment later he said, "All right, we will agree to their conditions. However, they can only offer payment with magic crystals. Moreover, we will only sell the opportunity to learn basic combat techniques. Each learning opportunity will cost 1,000 magic crystals. This condition isn't limited to these guilds either, it will stand for all players. As for the guild's other requests, refuse them." Due to the appearance of the Primordial Divine Ruin, basic combat techniques had become more commonplace in God's domain. Even so, pitifully few first-rate guilds had secured any techniques from the ruin. The other guilds couldn't even make it inside. However, as players unlocked more of the Primordial Divine Ruin, the number of players allowed inside would increase. Moreover, as players continued to grow stronger, it would only be a matter of time before more guilds secured basic combat techniques. Rather than wait for such a future, it'd be better if Zero Wing took advantage of the current situation and sold learning opportunities, making a fortune. In fact, many large guilds had openly sold learning opportunities for basic combat techniques in the past. He simply executed this business strategy ahead of time. In any case, he had obtained 3 basic combat techniques on his way to the 5th underground floor, with 2 from the Earth Dragon. As for the advanced combat techniques, there was no way he'd sell them. Both in his previous life and in this one, advanced combat techniques were a guild's core secret. While basic combat techniques helped players build a solid foundation, they did very little to improve players' combat standards. Only advanced combat techniques had a considerable effect on players' combat standards. 1,000 crystals per chance? Isn't that price a little too high? Melancholic Smile asked awkwardly. Currently, magic crystals sold for 30 silver each on the market. Thus, 1,000 magic crystals were worth 300 gold. However, while the various guilds might accept a price of 300 gold, that wouldn't necessarily be the case for 1,000 magic crystals. Every large guild desperately needed magic crystals right now, and players wouldn't necessarily learn a combat technique in its entirety on the first attempt. It's fine. Just tell them. Whether or not they accept our price is up to them. Nobody's forcing them to learn our combat techniques, Cherfong said, chuckling. Although basic combat techniques were the weakest of the bunch, they weren't easily found. Players could not obtain one just because they wanted to. Despite the Primordial Divine Ruin activating some time ago, only a small number of basic combat techniques had dropped thus far. Moreover, different basic combat techniques offered different kinds of benefits. Some improved attack methods, some improved footwork, and so on. Just because a player had learned a basic combat technique, that did not mean that other techniques would be useless. On the contrary, the more basic combat techniques a player learned, the sturdier their foundation would become. With a strong foundation, players would have a much easier time learning advanced combat techniques. In fact, players may even be able to create their own basic or advanced combat technique. I'll relay the message to these guilds and announce it to the public then, Melancholic Smile said. After giving the matter some thought, she saw the logic in Cherfeng's decision. Other guilds still treated their basic combat techniques like family heirlooms. Even core members had to pay a significant amount of GCPs to learn the techniques. Since they had approached Zero Wing to purchase its family heirlooms, it was only natural that the guild demand a higher price. Moreover, there were many wealthy individuals among God's Domain's adventurer teams and independent experts. Generally, adventurer teams and independent experts had no opportunity to learn basic combat techniques, so they'd be more than willing to pay the price. After disconnecting his call with Melancholic Smile, Cherfong sent out a few scouts to explore the 5th floor. In less than 10 minutes, Cherfong received a report from one of the scouts. Guild leader, I found a gigantic magic array in the forest. There's also an NPC in the center of the array. A scouting assassin reported. An NPC? Send me your coordinates. Cherfong was instantly ecstatic. As far as he knew, there shouldn't be an NPCs on the Primordial Divine Ruins rest floors. Since one of his scouts had found one, that NPC must be related to Primordial City. Chapter 1668 Primordial City's Entrance Test. Chapter 1668 Primordial City's Entrance Test. Chapter 1668 Primordial City's Entrance Test. Cherfong moved through the tranquil forest and proceeded towards the coordinates the scouting assassin sent him. Very quickly, he came across a clearing that was abounding with mana, so much that it had even condensed into a white mist that enveloped the area. What amazing mana! Cherfong was startled as he moved through the white mist. While he stood within the white mist, not only did his mind become much clearer than before, but even his stamina and concentration recovery rates skyrocketed. The recovery rates were at least 4 times higher than what one would experience inside hotels of NPC cities. If players were to practice combat in such an environment, the results would be wondrous. Training here would be particularly effective. In his previous life, while part of the reason why players loved places with high mana density was the ease in exhibiting their combat standards there, a more important reason was the much greater efficiency in practicing and learning combat techniques. Although combat techniques did not consume mana, they did take a toll on the user's stamina and concentration. Meanwhile, unlike basic attributes, hidden attributes like stamina and concentration were not displayed using numerical values. Players could only rely on their own senses to determine how much stamina and concentration they had remaining. If players fought normally inside major NPC cities, their stamina and concentration consumption would be roughly equal to their regeneration rates. Hence, players could fight in arenas to their heart's content without worrying about becoming exhausted. However, it was a different story if players started incorporating combat techniques in battle. Combat techniques placed a significant burden on stamina and concentration. Executing a basic combat technique would cost roughly 4 to 5 times more stamina and concentration than executing a simple attack. Hence, if players continuously executed basic combat techniques, even when fighting or practicing inside a city, they would very quickly exhaust their stamina and concentration. Needless to say, the depletion rate for executing advanced combat techniques was even more severe. Hence, high mana density locations were extremely popular among experts of God's Domain during Shifeng's previous life. In the current God's Domain, combat techniques had yet to be popularized. If they had, though, Zero Wing City's player population would have long since shot past 10 million. This was also one of the reasons behind Shifeng's decision to sell basic combat techniques to the public right now. If only a small number of people are allowed to enter Primordial City, it won't be a bad idea to have the ones left out remain here to practice combat techniques. Taking a look at the mist-covered clearing, Shifeng figured that there was more than enough space for 1,000 players to practice combat techniques here. Places with high mana density were extremely rare in God's Domain, not to mention places with mana so dense that it formed a mist. This small area was definitely a sacred training ground. Any superpower that discovered such a location would definitely do everything they could to monopolize it to nurture their own experts. Guild leader, the NPC is over there. After Shifeng arrived at the designated coordinates, a blue-clad assassin approached him. The assassin then pointed at the old man standing inside a magic array a short distance away. The elder wore a set of white robes and held a golden staff in his right hand. Looking at this elder, Shifeng found that the old man did not exude any kind of powerful aura and looked very ordinary. However, when Shifeng tried inspecting him, he failed to get any information about the elder, not even the old man's name. Everything was displayed in question marks. Following which, Shifeng used omniscient eyes to observe the old man. Tyrol, Primordial City's protector, hero, divine mage. Level? HP? A hero? Shifeng could not help but be stunned. He had never imagined that he would actually meet a living, breathing hero. In God's Domain, heroes had long since vanished into legend. The hero standing before him right now was something entirely different from the heroes summoned using heroes' chapters. More precisely, the heroes summoned using heroes' chapters were heroic spirits, not true heroes. Even so, they were still incomparably powerful and more than capable of safeguarding an entire town or city by themselves. However, a true hero was on an entirely different level compared to a heroic spirit. Unlike heroic spirits, true heroes still retained the blessing they received from ancient gods. Therefore, their life rating was even higher than that of archaic species. Moreover, heroes possessed extraordinary combat standards. Hence, if one did not utilize any special techniques, even 100 Tier 5 players would not be enough to take down a living hero at their peak. A hero was in existence that was truly capable of turning the tide of battle with their strength alone. Although seeing a living hero excited Shifeng greatly, when he noticed the hero's identity as Primordial City's protector, he quickly suppressed his excitement and approached the elder. The moment Shifeng set foot into the magic array, Tyrol opened his eyes abruptly and disappeared from where he stood. In the next moment, he appeared before Shifeng and quietly scrutinized the youth before him. When Shifeng felt Tyrol's gaze on him, he felt as if his entire existence was under examination. However, he was not particularly surprised by this situation. Primordial City was a blessing of the ancient gods. Players belonging to forces deemed hostile by the ancient gods, such as the forces of darkness, should not even think of setting foot into Primordial City. If any of these players were discovered, they would be eliminated immediately. Young man, you've done well to reach this place. I am Tyrol, a protector of Primordial City, Tyrol said, revealing a faint smile and giving Sherfone a nod of approval. If you wish to enter Primordial City, you have to pass the entrance test. Moreover, you have only 3 chances to challenge it. If you fail all 3, you can only try again during your next visit to the Primordial Divine Ruin. Lord Protector, may I know the contents of the test? Sherfone asked respectfully. It's a simple test. All you need to do is defeat yourself, Tyrol replied, smiling. Of course, there are also differences in difficulty. The more difficult the test you challenge, the more contribution points you will obtain once you arrive in Primordial City. There are 5 different difficulties available: normal, hard, hell, Azura, and God. Meanwhile, the contribution points you will gain from them are 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, and 10,000, respectively. Each person has only 3 opportunities to challenge the test. You must cherish them. Upon hearing Tyrol's words, although Sherfone kept his expression indifferent, inwardly, he was bursting with joy. Similar to the city on Thunder Island, if players wished to mingle in Primordial City, they needed contribution points. Without contribution points, they could enjoy only the basic benefits the city offered and should not even think of obtaining the truly good stuff available. Meanwhile, the reason why Sherfone was excited was the large number of contribution points the entrance test awarded. In his previous life, when he visited Primordial City, he did not do so by passing the entrance test but by using a teleportation ticket, which he had obtained through killing monsters. He had received only 500 contribution points in doing so. However, with just 500 contribution points, one would be no different from a beggar inside Primordial City. Of course, one's contribution points would not remain the same forever. There were plenty of methods to earn contribution points. Completing quests was the simplest among them, though inefficient. Ordinary quests only granted around 2 to 5 points each, while high-ranking quests granted around 20 to 50 points each. However, high-ranking quests were extremely rare. Hence, collecting even 500 contribution points was very difficult. Yet now, even the normal entrance test awarded 1,000 contribution points upon completion. The additional 500 points would save players plenty of time. Moreover, this was also good news to Zero Wings members. It meant that everyone would have an opportunity to enter Primordial City. Young adventurer, have you decided to enter Primordial City? Tyrol asked, smiling as he looked at Sherfone. I am willing to accept the test. Sherfone nodded. Very good. May I know which difficulty you wish to choose? Tyrol asked with a wave of his hand. Instantly, 5 crystal balls of different colors appeared before Sherfone. Aside from having different colors, these crystal balls also exuded auras of various intensities. Even the crystal ball with the weakest aura made Sherfone shudder involuntarily, whereas the one with the strongest aura made him feel deep despair. Chapter 1669 Shadow of Trial. Chapter 1669 Shadow of Trial. What powerful auras! Sherfone tensed as he gazed at the 5 crystal balls hovering before him. It was obvious that these crystal balls represented the strength of the opponent he would face. These crystal balls' auras also provided a hint to help players make the best decision. However, even the weakest crystal ball radiated considerable pressure. It was evident that entering Primordial City wouldn't be as easy as he had expected. Sherfone wasn't the only player present who could sense the 5 crystal balls' auras. Aqua Rose and the others, who had just arrived outside of the magic array, could sense the intense energy from the crystal balls as well. Every crystal ball felt as if it contained some horrific creature. These crystals represent your opponent's strengths. You may choose the one that you think you can defeat, but please remember, you only have 3 chances. Tyrol reminded. 3 chances? After giving the matter some thought, Sherfone proceeded to choose the second strongest crystal ball. Lord Tyrol, I choose this one. Based on the aura of the God rank test, he knew that he had no chance of completing it. In fact, he wasn't even particularly confident of passing the Azura rank test, but since he had 3 chances, he might as well give it a try. If he could clear the Azure rank test, he could earn more contribution points before entering Primordial City, which would save him from having to pick up plenty of troublesome tasks. Azure rank? Tyrol could not help but shake his head as he looked at Shifeng. What a courageous young man you are. However, since you've made your decision, let the test begin. Saying so, Tyrol gestured with his left hand. Suddenly, the Azure-ranked crystal ball shattered, and the shards transformed into 3 clouds of mist. These clouds gradually took on humanoid shapes, and a moment later, 3 creatures, identical to Shifeng, manifested inside the magic array. Meanwhile, aside from their names, Shadow of Trial, the system revealed no information about them. 3. The corners of Shifeng's mouth twitched slightly. Although he could not see the Shadows of Trial's basic attributes, he clearly sensed that they were higher than his. Aqua Rose and the others, who watched from outside of the magic array, gasped when they saw the 3 Shadows of Trial. Each of the shadows felt like a great lord. No, to be more precise, the shadows' auras were stronger than any of the great lords they had faced. It would not be a stretch to call them grand lords. To pass the test, you simply need to land 10 hits on each of them. I must warn you, they know everything you know. Likewise, if they hit you 10 times, you will be eliminated, Tyrol said. After Tyrol explained the rules, the 3 Shadows of Trial revealed human-like sneers. Suddenly, they vanished, leaving afterimages as they charged at Shifeng. So fast! The watching crowd was shocked. The shadows had moved so quickly that all they had seen was faint afterimages. Moreover, unlike ordinary monsters, the Shadows of Trial commanded extremely high intellect. Their fighting style wouldn't be monotonous. Moreover, all 3 shadows coordinated perfectly, each striking at Shifeng from different directions. As soon as the shadows appeared around Shifeng, each launched a different attack. Illusory Shadow. Purgatory Pentaslash. Shadow Blade. The Shadows of Trial's attacks sealed off Shifeng's escape paths. To make matters worse, the illusory shadow attacks couldn't be blocked. Crap! Shifeng paled as he realized his situation. Not even he dared to receive all 3 skill attacks head-on. If he tried to, he would undoubtedly end up dead in the blink of an eye. Just before the attacks landed, Shifeng activated Divine Steps, and 10 doppelgangers split from his body. He immediately switched positions with a nearby doppelganger, and used Shadow Blade against the nearest Shadow of Trial. However, before the Shadow Blades could reach the Shadow of Trial, 10 doppelgangers split from its body. Shifeng's 10 Shadow Blades then pierced through the Shadow of Trial's form. However, it was evident that he had nearly struck a doppelganger. How is this possible? They have my weapons and equipment skills as well? Shifeng was shocked when the shadow also used Divine Steps. However, before Shifeng could regain his senses, all 3 Shadows of Trial activated Heavenly Dragon's power, their attributes soaring. They slashed their blades at their target, the intensity of their strength creating powerful gales. With no better plan, Shifeng continued to switch positions with his doppelgangers to avoid the incoming attacks. Although Heavenly Dragon's power was strong, it was a berserk skill that focused on boosting strength. Its buff to speed was only subpar. For a time, Shifeng was at a complete disadvantage as the 3 Shadows of Trial chased him relentlessly. The spectating players outside of the magic array were flabbergasted. They were literally watching 3 doppelgangers gang up on their guild leader. Moreover, the doppelgangers' basic attributes were even higher than Shifeng's. If they had to face 3 of those doppelgangers at once, they'd likely die in an instant. However, Divine Steps had a limited duration. The instant those allied doppelgangers vanished, Shifeng gritted his teeth as he also activated Heavenly Dragon's power. Upon activating the berserk skill, he darted for one of the 3 shadows. Sword's Orbit. Suddenly, brilliant stars bombarded the Shadow of Trial, one after another. However, before the hits landed, they abruptly halted before a protective barrier. Absolute Domain. When Shifeng's targeted Shadow of Trial had activated Absolute Domain, the other 2 shadows also gained invulnerability. Giving Shifeng no time to react, one of the three shadows activated Instant Strike and swung its blade fiercely at the player. Shifeng knew that he couldn't dodge the attacks in time. The only thing he could do was to activate his own Instant Strike and execute Sword's Orbit to defend himself as much as possible. Boom! 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 Every time their weapons clashed, dazzling sparks flew around them. Loud clangs also echoed throughout the forest. It seemed as if two primordial beasts were attempting to slay one another. A moment later, however, Shifeng slid backward. As soon as the first shadow of Trial's Instant Strike ended, another shadow activated the skill. When Shifeng's own Instant Strike came to an end, he lost his ability to keep up with the shadow's attacks. Absolute Domain. After activating his invulnerability skill, Shifeng switched the aura of Earth to the aura of Time and activated Forbidden Domain. It might be much of an issue if only one shadow of Trial could use all of his skills, but the fact that all three were capable of this put Shifeng at a painful disadvantage. If he wished to emerge victorious, he had to rely on his combat techniques. As the shadows of Trial weren't ones to be beaten, one of them activated Forbidden Domain as well. Suddenly, both sides were silenced, losing the ability to use spells or skills. Following which, the three shadows ganged up on Shifeng once again. Although Shifeng's techniques were superior, the Shadow Trio had higher basic attributes. Moreover, the Shadow Trio disregarded their own defense, as they brutally attacked. This forced Shifeng into a defensive state. He was only one person, after all. If he tried to strike one of the three shadows, he'd leave himself open for the other two. Meanwhile, each of the shadows could afford to take 10 hits each, but he would be eliminated after 10 hits. Both sides struggled in a stalemate. Shifeng focused on a single shadow, using his superior techniques to create gaps in its defenses and attack. The bitter struggle inside the magic array made the spectating players anxious. But they also knew that such an intense battle wouldn't last long. Once the silence debuff ended, Shifeng would be at a disadvantage once again. When Forbidden Domain's duration had only 10 seconds remaining, despite Shifeng's desperate attempts, he had only struck one of the three shadows 5 times. He still needed to land 5 more hits on that shadow to eliminate it, but he was running out of time. 8 seconds. 5 seconds. 3 seconds. Am I going to lose? Chapter 1670 Ascension Realm. Chapter 1670 Ascension Realm. As the seconds ticked by, and Forbidden Domain neared the end of its duration, Aqua Rose and the other Zero Wing members couldn't help their growing nerves as they watched from outside of the magic array. They had never thought that even the test to enter Primordial City would be so difficult. Aside from all else, once Shifeng and one of the shadows of Trial's Forbidden Domains ended, the other 2 shadows could still use the skill. At that time, Shifeng would have to face 3 shadows that could use skills while he could not. With the huge disparity in combat power, he would doubtlessly meet his end. Not only did the shadows of Trial have higher basic attributes, but their combat standards were also at the refinement realm. They executed every slash without any excess movement. When the 3 shadows cooperated, they could even make up for the weaknesses in each other's defenses and elevate their combat power further. I have no choice but to gamble everything on one attack. Shifeng also knew what outcome awaited him once his Forbidden Domain ended. With no other choice, he gritted his teeth and forced his way through the countless incoming attacks, swinging his blades at the shadow that had already taken 5 hits. Sword's Orbit. If he could eliminate one shadow before Forbidden Domain ran out, he'd still have a chance at victory, albeit a small one. If he didn't do so, he would die the moment his skill's duration ended. However, as if they had predicted Shifeng's desperation, the 3 shadows smirked as they launched attacks, aiming for Shifeng's blind spots. Despite noticing the incoming attacks, Shifeng did not bother dodging. Instead, he continued to swing his swords at the shadow before him. 1 slash. 2 slashes. At this point, Shifeng traded blow for blow with the shadows. As a result, he was hit, again and again. 2 hits. 4 hits. 6 hits. Faster. I need to be faster. As Shifeng frantically brandished his weapons, he gained unprecedented focus. The only thing on his mind was landing a hit on the shadow of trial before him. However, despite Shifeng's flurry of attacks, his target could still endure 2 more attacks. Shifeng was only 2 hits away from elimination himself. Just as Shifeng's 2 swords were about to bite into the targeted shadow, the other 2 shadows, one behind and one to the left, simultaneously swung towards Shifeng's blind spots. "It's over." Tyrol sighed faintly. The young man before him had just barely missed the mark. If Shifeng could have killed the shadow of trial before Forbidden Domain ran out, he would have had a chance of passing the Azura rank test. "Is it over?" Shifeng could sense the 2 shadows' longswords nearing his body, but he was powerless to do anything about the weapons. At most, he could take one of the shadows of trial down with him. As the 2 long swords soared closer to Shifeng's back and abdomen, something about the situation felt incredibly familiar. Shifeng felt like this test was similar to the test Reinbeck, one of the Sea God's Temple's Vice Knight commanders, had given him. Before the breakthrough he had achieved during that trial, he hadn't been able to withstand Reinbeck's attacks no matter what he had done. He had only been able to watch as he had repeatedly been defeated. "Reinbeck?" Shifeng's eyes shone with realization when he recalled his battle with Reinbeck. "Right. Combat method. My combat method." Suddenly, Shifeng put strength into his legs and made a spinning jump. Utilizing the rotational momentum, he swung Killing Ray at the shadow attacking his abdomen, the sacred sword moving with remarkable speed. Dang! A crisp clang echoed throughout the forest. In that critical moment, Shifeng had used Killing Ray to block the attack from the side while he used Abyssal Blade to slice at the targeted shadow's shoulder. He then utilized the force generated from blocking the attack at his side to push himself over 8 yards away from the nearest shadow. When his feet touched the ground again, he used a hand to stabilize himself, only coming to a halt after 2 more spins. He survived? Aqua Rose and the other Zero-Wing experts stared with wide eyes, utterly shocked. Shifeng had actually executed an incredible maneuver at the last second, narrowly avoiding mutual destruction. Tyrol revealed an odd look as he watched Shifeng. "How is that possible? He has already reached the Ascension realm in the realms of truth?" Existences that could set foot in the realms of truth realm were exceedingly rare, with only a few throughout the kingdom. Meanwhile, experts who had reached the Ascension realm were even rare in Primordial City. One could not simply reach the Ascension realm by understanding the realm's philosophy. They would also need to temper themselves and gain the experience of countless life-or-death battles to execute the proper physical response. During Tyrol's brief moment of surprise, the 3 shadows of trial resumed their assault on Shifeng. Like before, the 3 shadows surrounded Shifeng and attacked him from different angles. Although Shifeng had avoided certain death, he was still at a disadvantage. He had little more than a second before his Forbidden Domain ran out, and he had only blocked the attack aimed for his abdomen. The attack from behind had still found its mark. Now, he could only afford to receive 1 more hit before he was eliminated from the test. "Come!" Shifeng said with a hint of excitement as he watched the 3 shadows. Suddenly, over 20 sword lights surrounded Shifeng, sealing off all escape paths. However, instead of using Sword's orbit to repel the attacks, Shifeng simply adjusted his footwork, turning as he executed 8 slashes, which wasn't much compared to his earlier efforts. Yet, something surprising happened again. Despite reaching his maximum attack speed, these slashes continued to accelerate. The 3 shadows of trial interlocked with their target before passing by Shifeng. The swordsman blocked every one of the incoming attacks. "Die!" As the shadows passed, Shifeng swung Killing Ray, slicing the neck of the shadow that had already received 9 hits. The shadow then vanished, leaving 2 remaining in the magic array. "What just happened?" Aqua Rose, Fire Dance, Shadow Sword, and the other Tier 2 experts from Zero-Wing were stupefied. Not only had Shifeng blocked every incoming attack without using Sword's orbit, but he had also created a gap in the Shadow's defenses and eliminated one of them. None of them could figure out how he had pulled it off. So, this is the realm above the truth realm that Reinbeck had mentioned? Sherfone felt incredible as he turned towards the remaining shadows of trial. Reinbeck had only informed Sherfone that he had just entered the truth realm. After undergoing Reinbeck's test, he had learned that one shouldn't just focus on adapting to the changing battle physically. One could also adjust the perspective of the battle. In other words, aside from using his environment to his advantage, he could use his opponent's attacks as well. Unlike the realms of refinement, which focused on sharpening one's senses, the realms of truth focused on improving one's utilization of their body and the environment. Only, Sherfone had never realized that the realms of truth's principles could help increase his combat power by such a large margin, allowing him to overcome his enemy's attributes and overwhelm the three shadows of trial. However, Sherfeng's forbidden domain had ended after he had killed the one shadow. Without hesitation, the two remaining shadows activated Blade Liberation before one activated Forbidden Domain. Twofold Berserk? Sherfone could not help but grin as he noticed the shadow's auras strengthen. Before the enemy's Forbidden Domain reached him, he activated Blade Liberation as well. Fortunately, his skill's cooldowns had reset when he had first entered the magic array. So, the Berserk skills he had exhausted during his battle with the 4th floor's Earth Dragon were ready for him. After activating Blade Liberation, Sherfone executed Void Steps and disappeared. Seeing this, one of the two shadows activated Skywheel Sword, while the other activated Lightning Edge, both of which were AoEs. However, either of the shadows' attacks had forced Sherfone out of his concealment. For a time, the shadows attacked their surroundings randomly in confusion, yet even after dozens of seconds, Sherfone remained hidden. He only revealed himself after both shadows had used up their forbidden domains, and when he did, he already stood beside them. Illusory Shadow. Suddenly, 5 crisscross slashes bombarded one of the shadows. Although the targeted shadow responded quickly and tried to dodge, it still received 3 hits. Realizing the danger they were in, the two shadows decided to end the fight quickly, both activating Chilling Field. The domain skill covered a 50-yard radius and was capable of both offense and defense. The skill's movement speed reduction effect also prevented Sherfone from moving about freely. Seeing this, Sherfone responded in kind, activating his own Chilling Field. Suddenly, 27 icicles covered the battlefield, 9 belonging to Sherfone and 18 from the shadows of trial. Following which, the 27 icicles danced and clashed repeatedly and rapidly. Yet, despite outnumbering their target, the two shadows failed to land a single hit on Sherfone. In fact, Sherfone only needed 6 of his icicles to defend himself, attacking with the remaining 3. 2 hits. 3 hits. 5 hits. The two shadows rapidly accumulated hits, and eventually, Sherfone landed the 10th strike on both shadows of trial, killing them. Chapter 1671 City Rookie. Chapter 1671 City Rookie. He won? Our guild leader is amazing! As the Zero-Wing team watched the shadows of trial and the magic array gradually fade, they couldn't believe their eyes. The battle that had just occurred had overwhelmed them mentally. If they had been distracted for a split second, they would have missed the instant Sherfone and the shadows had clashed. Both sides' basic attributes were ridiculously high, and they could clash multiple times in the instant it took to blink. The several dozen White Tiger Dojo disciples that had joined the team on the 5th floor were utterly dumbfounded. They had witnessed many expert battles in the past and had even fought experts in the battle arena, but if they had to rank the experts they've seen thus far, the player before them would doubtlessly rank at the very top. It's finally over. Sherfone breathed a deep sigh of relief once the battle had ended. He hadn't expected the Azura rank test to be so difficult. If not for the epiphany regarding the realms of truth, which had allowed him greater use of his own body and everything around him, including his opponents, the shadows of trial would have defeated him. However, this experience had taught Sherfone one thing. Aside from improving in the realms of refinement, which focused on one's senses and physical control, it was very important that players climb the realms of truth. The realms of refinement were akin to the body. As one became physically stronger, they'd be able to exert more strength. However, the realms of truth were like a weapon. Although an individual could rely on physical strength to pose a threat, there was a limit to how much of a threat they'd become. But if that person were given a weapon to complement their strength, they could pose an even greater threat. Naturally, the better the weapon one wielded, the more power they could exhibit. This also why experts who had yet to reach the refinement realm were sometimes capable of defeating refinement realm experts with their combat techniques. Combat techniques made use of the realms of truth's principles. It seems that we'll need to increase everyone's familiarity with the realms of truth in the future, Shifeng thought to himself. There was a limit to how fast one could reach higher realms of refinement, and reaching higher realms of truth wouldn't conflict with a player's growth in the realms of refinement. In fact, the two realms would even complement each other, helping one improve their combat power far faster. Only, introducing everyone to the realms of truth wouldn't be easy. First, he needed a proper training ground. It was obvious that neither the battle arena nor the Divine Colosseum could offer similar benefits as Reinbeck's test. Without such a training ground, players wouldn't be able to comprehend the realms of truth's principles regardless of how many times he explained them. Moreover, understanding theory and putting said theory into practice were two different things. Wait, that's not right. There is one. Suddenly, Shifeng recalled the White Tower within the Lost Town. While the White Tower seemed like a device designed to help players improve their combat standards and gain a better feel for the refinement realm, it actually operated very much like Reinbeck's test. Hence, Shifeng should be able to use the tower to help his players comprehend the realms of truth. Furthermore, God's domain's lore never mentioned the realms of refinement, only the realms of truth. The more Shifeng thought about it, the more he felt that the White Tower was a suitable training device to help players grasp the realms of truth. A sacred land to train in the realms of truth, huh? Shifeng had begun to give up on the Lost Town, preparing to accept the system's penalty. But now, his desire to secure the town had reignited. It's no wonder why the quest to obtain the Lost Town is so difficult. So, this is why. Training one's grasp of the realms of refinement had long since become common in the virtual gaming world. The various super guilds already had complete training systems for just that, while super first-rate guilds had partial systems. However, not one of these guilds had a training system for the realms of truth. They most likely didn't even know how to train players' grasp of the realms of truth. If he could secure the Lost Town, he'd have a sacred land for players to focus on the realms of truth. With the help of the White Tower, players would not have to waste time poking around in the dark like the Freedom Alliance's silent entropy, and could grasp the realms of truth with much greater efficiency. With the boneless land's Lost Town housing such a sacred tool, it was only natural that the quest to obtain it would be insanely difficult. As Shifeng tried to figure out how to complete the Demon's Nest quest, he heard the sound of a system notification. System, congratulations! You are the first player to complete the Azure Rank entrance test, rewarding 3,000 Primordial City contribution points and 1 Primordial City's City Rookie emblem. Young adventurer, congratulations on passing the test. As the first heaven-blessed individual to pass the Azure Rank test, this City Rookie emblem belongs to you. Make good use of it. Who knows? It might even help you improve further within Primordial City, Tyro said after appearing before Shifeng. He then took out a silver emblem in the shape of a crescent moon encompassing a sun and passed it to Shifeng. The instant the emblem appeared, the surrounding mana gravitated towards and circled the emblem. City Rookie emblem? After recovering from his shock over the additional 3,000 contribution points, Shifeng gave the emblem a curious look. This was the first time he had heard of this item. Based on Tyro's tone when he had mentioned it, it should be extraordinary. Immediately, Shifeng tried to inspect the emblem's attribute panel. City Rookie emblem, dark gold rank. Primordial City's emblem of honor. When worn, user will enjoy the authority of a bronze adventurer in Primordial City. In addition, user may teleport to Primordial City from any location. Cooldown, 2 natural days, 96 hours. User restriction Yi Feng. Amazing! It's giving me the authority of a bronze adventurer right off the bat. No wonder why he told me to make good use of it. Sherfone was ecstatic as he gazed at the city rookie emblem. At this point, the term Bronze Adventurer was still foreign to God's Domain's players. This was because the title was unique to Primordial City. Bronze Adventurers in Primordial City were the equivalent of nobles in NPC cities. Only, as the ancient gods had specifically created Primordial City for adventurers, noble ranks didn't exist within its walls. Rather, special ranks were granted to adventurers based on their contributions to the city. The available ranks included Common Adventurer, Bronze Adventurer, Silver Adventurer, and Gold Adventurer. Each subsequent rank enjoyed greater authority and treatment in Primordial City than the last. However, it was extremely difficult for players to rise through the ranks as they weren't based on Primordial City contribution points. Instead, they were determined by one's Primordial City honor points. One had to earn 1,000 honor points just to become a Bronze Adventurer. Moreover, players would be fortunate to receive 1 honor point even after completing a high-rank quest in the city. If players wanted to earn more than that per quest, they'd have to complete Primordial City's trial quests, which were exceedingly challenging. Unfortunately, failing to complete the trial resulted in an unusually severe death penalty. In the past, most players had opted for the safe and reliable method of completing high-rank quests to collect honor points rather than challenge Primordial City's trial quests. Because of this, very few players had become Bronze Adventurers, let alone Silver or Gold Adventurers. Even after 10 years in God's Domain, Sherfone had never heard of someone becoming a Gold Adventurer. Meanwhile, not only would Bronze Adventurers enjoy a 10% discount on all expenditures that required Primordial City contribution points, but they'd also get to enjoy other benefits that Common Adventurers had no access to. One such example was the planar teleportation function, which allowed players to travel to the various higher planes. Not only were the higher planes monsters much stronger, but they also dropped far better loot. It was also possible to obtain unique resources. Only, teleporting to a higher plane was expensive, costing 1,000 contribution points per teleportation. If players died in these higher planes, they'd be teleported back to Primordial City instantly. Without sufficient strength and preparation, only a fool would grind in these higher planes. Right. There's still the higher planes. Sherfeng's eyes suddenly sparkled. Other players might not know where to secure a large number of darkness stones, but he did. However, he hadn't had the means to reach these locations, but now he did. Sherfeng immediately instructed his team to challenge the entrance test and told them what to do once they entered Primordial City. Meanwhile, he made his way, with Tyrole's help, to the city. When Sherfeng arrived in Primordial City, every player within the Primordial Divine Ruin received a system notification about it. Chapter 1672 7 Luminaries Temple. Chapter 1672 7 Luminaries Temple. Many players were still fighting in the Primordial Divine Ruin, and the various superpowers on the 4th floor were preparing to raid the recently respawned Frost Flame 2-headed Earth Dragon. However, before they could begin, they heard the crisp voice of the system. Primordial Divine Ruin Region System Announcement. A player has successfully entered Primordial City. From now onward, after 500 players have entered Primordial City, the entrance test's difficulty will increase by 30%. After 1,000 players have entered Primordial City, the difficulty will increase by 50%. Count resets once per day. The system announcement repeated 3 times, its message becoming ingrained in everyone's minds. How did Zero Wing get into Primordial City so quickly? After the 500th player, the difficulty to enter Primordial City will increase? The upper echelons of the various superpowers stuck on the 4th floor revealed somber expressions upon listening to the system notification. Based on the system notification, they discovered that Primordial City did not have an entry limit. Players only needed to pass a test to enter the legendary city. However, as many as 800 Zero Wing members had proceeded to the Primordial Divine Ruins 5th floor. If the entrance test were not particularly difficult, then Zero Wing would claim the first 500 slots. This meant that the tests the various superpowers would have to pass to enter would become far more difficult. Due to the increased difficulty, players who would have been capable of passing the test might fail. This, in turn, would decrease the number of players the various superpowers could send into the city. Now that they had a clearer understanding of the situation, these superpowers became even more desperate to reach the 5th floor as soon as possible. Meanwhile, news of Zero Wing entering Primordial City quickly spread outside of the ruin. What? Zero Wing is the first guild to send players into Primordial City? Doesn't that mean Zero Wing will be the first to pioneer and explore the city? I'm afraid that it's not that simple. I've heard that only the first 500 players will face the normal difficulty entry tests, whereas other players' tests will be more difficult. The test's difficulty will increase yet again after 1,000 players have entered Primordial City. I've also heard that Zero Wing led 800 players to the 5th floor. It'll monopolize the first 500 slots. With this, the various superpowers will likely have a tough time competing with Zero Wing when pioneering the city. With that many of its members entering Primordial City, Zero Wing will reap a huge harvest. From what I learned after looking into it, it seems like it's pretty easy to obtain combat techniques from Primordial City. This is especially true for advanced combat techniques. Suddenly, more independent players from various kingdoms became interested in Zero Wing. Both basic combat techniques and advanced combat techniques were out of reach for independent players like themselves. The various large guilds treated these combat techniques like family heirlooms, and they had strict requirements for anyone who wanted to learn their combat techniques, such as becoming a core member and signing a restrictive contract with the guild. However, Zero Wing could procure a large number of combat techniques from Primordial City, and if that was the case, Zero Wing may have looser conditions for learning the techniques it collected. It might even make the combat techniques available to all of its members, rather than just the core members. With that hope in mind, many independent players, particularly experts, began to gather in White River City and Zero Wing City from other kingdoms. As players tried to learn more about the guild, Zero Wing posted an announcement on Star Moon Kingdom's official forums. This announcement instantly caused a commotion throughout the kingdom. How generous of Zero Wing! With this, even independent players like us can learn combat techniques. But isn't 1,000 magic crystals a little expensive? Even experts will have to work hard for a long time to collect enough, let alone weaker players. You think that's expensive? You should see what the other guilds with combat techniques are demanding. Take Heaven's Burial, for example. Although the guild has plenty of combat techniques, anyone who wishes to learn them has to sign a very strict contract. In addition, members have to pay a certain price to learn each combat technique. Their price is only slightly under 1,000 magic crystals. It's better to learn the techniques from Zero Wing. At the very least, we'll retain our freedom. For a time, a large number of independent players celebrated Zero Wing's decision. The news excited many adventurer teams as well. Independent players might struggle to collect 1,000 magic crystals, but it wasn't any trouble for an adventurer team with several hundred members. When the various large guilds discovered the announcement, however, they fumed with fury. This was especially true for the guilds that had acquired combat techniques of their own. They had planned to use their combat techniques to attract loyal experts and gain an advantage over their competitors. But Zero Wing's latest announcement had ruined that idea. Black flames means truly are amazing. Heaven's Burial is likely doomed to fall now, Yuan Tianxin said. He could not help his rueful sigh as he read the report a subordinate had just sent. Uncle Yuan, what happened? Purple Jade asked curiously. Take a look for yourself, Yuan Tianxin said as he forwarded the report to Purple Jade. When Purple Jade read the report, her eyes widened in shock. She found it truly hard to believe that Zero Wing would actually be so generous as to offer its combat techniques to other players. By doing so, it would undoubtedly deal a massive blow to the various first-rate guilds that had acquired their own combat techniques. Naturally, Heaven's Burial was no exception. The guild's upper echelons would weep and rage once they heard about this. While everyone discussed Zero Wing, Shifeng arrived in Primordial City's teleportation hall. The teleportation hall's main hall looked like a massive cave. The hall's ceiling was at least 100 meters from the ground. It also seemed like some kind of miniature sun was stuck in the ceiling, illuminating the hall. As Shifeng looked around, he discovered numerous man-operated elevators, which led towards various spatial junctions. NPCs could arrive and leave Primordial City through these spatial junctions at any moment. These NPCs weren't limited to the human race, including members from other races as well. The instant Shifeng had arrived, both his mind and body had felt energized. The mana density here was no lower than that of Titan City. Players would definitely have an easier time practicing their combat or producing items here than elsewhere. Since Shifeng had visited Primordial City many times in his previous life, he didn't bother to look around the teleportation hall like some curious tourist. Instead, he quickly left the hall and ventured to Primordial City's streets. Primordial City was a city of legend. The city had as many NPCs as the most populated NPC cities in God's domain. There were easily over 4 or 5 million NPCs within the city at all times, which was more than 10 times the number of NPCs in Star Moon Kingdom's capital. Moreover, unlike the NPCs in ordinary NPC cities, those in Primordial City were at least level 150. Tier 2 NPCs were insignificant here, usually serving as gate attendants. Tier 3 NPCs, which were rare in other NPC cities, strode down almost every street in Primordial City. One would even find Tier 4 NPCs window shopping. After leaving the teleportation hall, Shifeng summoned his demonic flame tiger and made his way towards the heart of Primordial City. Although Primordial City's layout was complex, Shifeng knew the city like the back of his hand. After traveling for around 20 minutes, he reached a towering temple. The temple before him was over 300 meters tall and occupied enough space to accommodate 100,000 people. It looked more like a mountain than a building. This temple was also the most important structure in Primordial City. The 7 Luminaries Temple. Chapter 1673 Primordial Scroll. Chapter 1673 Primordial Scroll. Chapter 1673 Primordial Scroll. 2 mechanical puppets at the temple's entrance stopped Shifeng before he could enter the building. This is the 7 Luminaries Temple. Unauthorized individuals are not allowed entry. The 2 mechanical puppets crossed their great swords before the entrance, preventing Shifeng from proceeding. If any other player saw these mechanical puppets, they would definitely be given a fright. Both mechanical puppets were level 200 mythic monsters. They weren't ordinary mechanical puppets, either, but magically enhanced puppets. Not only did they possess extremely high intellect, but they also wielded domains. In other words, they were Tier 4 mythic monsters with domain skills. Even Tier 4 NPCs with domains would not be a match for these magically enhanced puppets. Furthermore, these magically enhanced puppets were only the 7 Luminaries Temple's gate attendants. There were much stronger guards within the temple itself. Based on Shifeng's knowledge, not even Tier 6 God-ranked players would dare to act presumptuously in the 7 Luminaries Temple without losing their lives. Primordial City was one of the safest cities throughout God's domain. Neither monsters nor players dared to cause trouble here, and those who did were killed without question. Meanwhile, Shifeng wasn't surprised to find these magically enhanced puppets barring his path. The 7 Luminaries Temple was one of Primordial City's core buildings. It was also where players could exchange their contribution points for items. But only players who had become adventurers within the city were allowed inside. Everyone else would be stopped at the door. If players wanted to become adventurers here, they had to pick up an adventurer quest from Primordial City's Adventurers Association. After completing their adventurer quest, players would be granted a Primordial City Adventurer emblem. Players would only be considered a common adventurer in the city once they had this emblem, and it would allow them to enjoy some of the benefits the city offered. However, since Shifeng was in a hurry, he hadn't stopped by the Adventurers Association to pick up the adventurer's quest. In response to the crossed greatswords before him, Shifeng took out his city rookie emblem and showed it to the guards, asking, "Can I enter now?" The city rookie emblem granted him the status of a bronze adventurer in Primordial City. Although the status couldn't be upgraded, it was enough for now. If he had free time in the future, he could simply pick up the adventurer quest and obtain the real adventurer emblem. City Rookie emblem confirmed. Identity confirmed. You may enter! After the two puppets inspected the City Rookie emblem, they relaxed into their original stances and turned their attention away from Sherfone. Seeing this, Sherfone made his way into the Seven Luminaries Temple. The Seven Luminaries Temple's lobby was a beautifully decorated plaza. The scenery was spectacular. It contained areas where people could rest and chat, and it even offered open-air restaurants and bars. The food and beverages sold here were unique to Primordial City, and couldn't be removed from the city. But the taste of these items was simply unforgettable. Even players who enjoyed delicious delicacies every day longed to dine here, but very few players could afford to do so. Every item in the Seven Luminaries Temple cost Primordial City contribution points. Neither coins nor magic crystals were accepted as currency. Meanwhile, a single meal here cost at least 100 CPs. Of course, players who consumed the meal would receive benefits that corresponded to the 100 CPs they paid, improving perception and focus. Unfortunately, the effects from a 100 CP meal would only last 2 hours. During that time, however, players could make use of the buff by renting a training room in the Seven Luminaries Temple to practice the combat techniques they had recently purchased. Likewise, the training rooms cost CPs to rent, with the basic training rooms costing 10 CPs per hour, intermediate training rooms costing 30 CPs per hour, and advanced training rooms costing 100 CPs per hour. To most players, though, this cost was astronomical. The system only granted free CPs on players' first visit to Primordial City, rewarding nothing for subsequent entries. Hence, it was very important that players carefully decide how to enter the Primordial City for their first visit. Aside from the first entry bonus, players could only obtain more contribution points by completing quests and through achievements in Primordial City. Sherfone didn't bother to look around after entering the Seven Luminaries Temple as he made his way for the exchange counter. "Sir, may I know what item you wish to purchase?" An elven beauty behind the counter asked with a smile. Although the female elf looked like a simple administrator for the exchange department, if one paid close attention, they'd discover that she was actually a level 150, Tier 3 Great Mage. Moreover, as a member of the elven race, her innate affinity with mana was incredibly high, making her slightly stronger than ordinary Tier 3 Great Mages of the same level. Inside a minor NPC city, this female elf could easily serve as the city's magistrate. If this elven woman decided to attack Sherfone now, he'd die instantly unless he activated an invulnerability skill in time. "I wish to purchase primordial souls," Sherfone said. "Primordial souls are extremely rare, so each will cost you 200 contribution points. We also have a daily exchange limit on primordial souls. Only 100 primordial souls are made available each day," the elf explained. "May I know how many primordial souls you wish to purchase, sir?" 20, Sherfone stated. Primordial souls were rare tools that could help players when they challenged their promotion quests. They were also unique to Primordial City. Naturally, Sherfone had to purchase as many primordial souls as he could afford now. Meanwhile, aside from the 5,000 CPs he had gained for clearing the Azura ranked entrance test, he had received a bonus of 3,000 CPs from the system, giving him a total of 8,000 CPs, so spending 4,000 on primordial souls wouldn't put him in the red. He also wasn't sure how many Zero Wing members would make it into Primordial City. Fortunately, unlike other players, he had the City Rookie emblem, which allowed him to earn CPs far more easily. "All right." The elf administrator then retrieved 20 bottles from the spatial storage unit behind her and said, "Sir, as a City Rookie, you enjoy a 10% discount on all purchases. Your total bill comes to 3,600 contribution points. Do you wish to purchase anything else?" After giving the matter some thought, Sherfone gritted his teeth and said, "I want to purchase 12 primordial scrolls and 1 teleportation stone to the darkness plane." Initially, he had planned to purchase advanced combat techniques after reaching Primordial City, but obtaining the boneless land's lost town was far more important right now. The darkness plane was one of the higher planes in God's domain, and the power of darkness on that plane was incredibly dense. Naturally, the monsters living in the darkness plane contained frightening amounts of power of darkness within them. When killed, they had a high chance of dropping a darkness stone fragment. Alchemists could use 100 of these fragments to synthesize a complete darkness stone, but their success rate was an excruciatingly low 30%. However, this was, by far, the best method to obtain darkness stones. On the other hand, if he tried to hunt darkness-type mythic monsters, the chance of obtaining a complete darkness stone was around 10%. When players in the past had to acquire darkness stones, they usually decided to do so in the darkness plane. However, as a higher plane, the darkness plane was extremely dangerous. With Shifeng's current strength, grinding there would be purely suicidal. He only dared to do so because he had the Bible of Darkness. If he wanted to increase his survival chances in the darkness plane, the Primordial Scrolls were necessary. The Primordial Scroll was a super-rare scroll that could only be used in higher planes. Players could use the scroll to summon heroic spirits to aid them in battle, and it was akin to a Tier 3 summoning scroll. However, heroic spirits summoned this way operated differently from ordinary summoned creatures. A summoned heroic spirit's strength wasn't in direct combat. Rather, they tended to focus on support. They possessed plenty of support skills and spells that could significantly strengthen players' combat power. Like the Primordial Souls, there was a daily exchange limit for the Primordial Scrolls. Each Primordial Scroll costs 300 contribution points. Only bronze adventurers and above can purchase the Darkness Plane Teleportation Stone for 1,000 contribution points. Including the City Rookie discount, that puts your new total at 7,740 contribution points. The elf administrator reported, smiling as she took out the items Shifeng had requested. Shifeng then paid his bill, instantly becoming a poor bastard. But he didn't mind the huge expenditure. Compared to the value of the lost town, spending this many contribution points was nothing. He then mailed the primordial souls to Aqua Rose while he teleported to the Darkness Plane. Chapter 1674 Darkness Plane. Chapter 1674 Darkness Plane. Chapter 1674 Darkness Plane. After Shifeng activated the teleportation stone, he abruptly blacked out. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself in an entirely different world. The sky was dusky in this world ruled by darkness and death. Shifeng felt as if he had just arrived in a small, dimly lit house, barely able to see 20 yards away. All he could see was a barren wasteland. This place didn't seem survivable for any creature. System, you have discovered the darkness world. System, since you do not belong to this world, you find this world's power oppressive. All senses weakened by 50%, basic attributes decreased by 30%, and gained EXP decreased by 95%. System, while in the darkness world, you cannot make contact with the outside world. Once you die, your soul will be directly expelled from the darkness world. 3 system notifications suddenly reached Shifeng's ears, one after another. Even Tier 2 players are suppressed so intensively? Shifeng frowned when he heard the system notifications. He wasn't particularly surprised that he had been suppressed. However, what he didn't expect was the degree of suppression. Not only were higher planes much larger than other worlds, but the discrimination within them was also more severe. His appearance in the darkness world was akin to trespassing. Meanwhile, the stronger the creature entering a foreign world was, the greater the suppression would be. He had also visited higher planes in the past. Only, he had already been a Tier 3 player, so his basic attributes had only been suppressed by 40%. Even though he had been fully geared in epic equipment, his basic attributes had only rivaled a great lord of the same level. His physique had also been considerably weaker. He had even had trouble against the various higher planes great lords of the same level. He hadn't expected the suppression on Tier 2 existences to be so severe. Tier 2 existences stood at the very bottom of the power hierarchy in higher planes. Even at the same level and tier, the higher planes monsters were much stronger than monsters on the God's Domain continent. This was because their life ratings were much higher than ordinary monsters, as were their combat standards. On the continent of God's Domain, dragons were creatures of legend, but in the higher planes, monsters with life ratings to rival dragons were everywhere. Hence, before reaching a certain strength, players had an exceedingly low survival chance in a higher plane. Even though it was common knowledge that higher planes offered plenty of high rank and precious resources that were rare or non-existent on God's domain's continent, the various superpowers in Shifeng's previous life hadn't casually explored these higher planes. Aside from the world's oppression and its monstrous strength, the environment was the greatest difference between the higher planes and the continent of God's domain. Take the darkness plane, for example. Upon arriving in this world, Shifeng had felt his body become considerably heavier than before. It felt as if the area's gravitational force had increased by 3 or 4 times. Moreover, the environment's power of darkness continuously corroded his body. Without extremely high darkness resistance, the ambient power of darkness would slay players even if they stood in place and did nothing. Not daring to waste time, Shifeng took out the Bible of Darkness and summoned a Tier 3 demon. In response, a demon in crimson scale armor, wielding a great sword, appeared before its summoner. Blood Demon, demonic creature, Tier 3 demon. Level 80. HP 34, 000, 000/34, 000. Demons were considered dark creatures in God's domain, so in the darkness world, they wouldn't be oppressed. Moreover, thanks to the Bible of Darkness's demon ruler skill, the blood demon had grown stronger. This was why Shifeng had boldly visited the darkness plane. Every monster in the darkness world was likely stronger than Shifeng, and he could only see up to 20 yards away. With such a disadvantage, monsters would likely discover him before he would sense them. On the other hand, if he took control of the demon, he could observe his surroundings through the demon's eyes. After giving it a try, he noticed a massive improvement to his range of vision. By seeing through the demon's eyes, Shifeng could see up to 500 yards away. He discovered that he currently stood in a gravel ridge, and a group of 10 4-meter-tall dark scorpions roamed roughly 300 yards away. 9 of the 10 dark scorpions had 3 tails, and the last had 5. Moreover, the 5-tailed scorpion radiated a light purple glow. Dark Scorpion, Dark Creature, Lord. Level 65. HP 18, 000, 000/18, 000, Mutated Dark Scorpion, Dark Creature, Great Lord. Level 68. HP 43, 000, 000/43, 000. Had Shifeng not come prepared, he would have likely ventured into the Dark Scorpion's detection range. If the 9 lords and their great lord leader had ambushed him while he had been so powerfully suppressed, he would have died very quickly. Fortunately, the teleportation stones that transferred players to the higher planes generally sent said players to level-appropriate areas. Even so, if he sent the blood demon to attack the group of dark scorpions by itself, the demon would definitely lose that battle. The mutated dark scorpion's strength alone could rival the blood demon's. As a higher plane creature, the mutated dark scorpion had a considerably higher life rating, after all. Furthermore, it had the support of 9 Lord-rank dark scorpions to surround and annihilate the blood demon. However, Shifeng had no intentions of circling past the group. He then took out a primordial scroll and activated it. As the primordial scroll activated, a 4-meter-tall elderly man appeared before him. The old man was semi-transparent and wielded a cane. Not bad. I actually got a great druid. Shifeng was quite satisfied when he saw the old man. Primordial Heroic Spirit, Hero, Great Druid. Level 75. HP 15, 000, 000/15, 000. Although the primordial soul summoned a random heroic spirit, all summoned heroic spirits were Tier 3. Unlike ordinary NPCs, heroic spirits wouldn't be oppressed in foreign worlds. In addition, they commanded plenty of Tier 3 spells and skills. They were the perfect support for players when grinding in higher planes. Any team that intended to grind in a higher plane would always purchase primordial scrolls before doing so. After summoning the heroic spirit, Shurfeng had the Great Druid cast a series of Tier 3 support spells. Tier 3 spell Forest Protection increases the defense and basic attributes of all allies by 20% for 30 minutes. Does not stack with other attribute increasing spells. Tier 3 spell Nature's Blessing, all resistances plus 80, 15% damage reduction, and a 15% increase to stamina for 30 minutes. Tier 3 spell Thorny Vines, protect a specified target with magical vines for 10 minutes. Anyone who attacks that target will receive damage from the magical vines. When the 3 support spells affected the Blood Demon's attributes rose by a large margin. Following which, Shurfeng controlled the Blood Demon and charged towards the Dark Scorpion group. When the Blood Demon was less than 200 yards away from the Dark Scorpions, it caught the monster's attention. Responding, the Dark Scorpions lashed their tails and hissed threateningly. Not waiting for the Dark Scorpions to attack, Shurfeng used the Tier 3 spell, Blood Sanction. Immediately, 50+ blades of blood flew at the 10 Dark Scorpions with lightning speed. Even if Shurfeng were at his peak and activated a Berserk skill, he would have trouble blocking all 50+ blood blades. He would have to dodge or activate a life-saving skill to avoid taking a hit. As the blood blades were about to reach the Dark Scorpions, the latter's tails blurred. Dang! 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 A series of dazzling sparks lit up the gloomy environment. The 9 Lord-ranked Dark Scorpions had successfully struck down over 80% of the blood blades, while the weapons that had found their mark had only dealt a little over -30,000 damage. The mutated Dark Scorpion, however, struck down all 9 incoming blades, emerging from the exchange unharmed. What high magic resistance! The outcome surprised Shurfeng a little. A Tier 3 Demon's Tier 3 spell carried immense power. Just one of those blood blades could rival a Great Lord's attack of the same level, yet they had only dealt a little over -30,000 damage after landing a direct hit. To the Dark Scorpions, who had 18 million HP each, the damage wasn't significant. During the brief moment Shurfeng had been surprised, the mutated Dark Scorpion screeched as its tails began to glow dark green as they lashed out at the Blood Demon. The tails had moved so quickly that Shurfeng hadn't been able to react in time. He had only managed to tilt the Blood Demon's body, evading 3 of the 5 attacks. When the mutated Dark Scorpion's 2 remaining tails struck the Blood Demon, its stingers slid through the demon's armor like a knife through paper, each dealing over -400,000 damage. Chapter 1675 Mutated Darkness Energy Crystal. Chapter 1675 Mutated Darkness Energy Crystal. After getting struck by the mutated Dark Scorpion's glowing stingers, the Blood Demon immediately gained a debuff. -22,347. When the debuff took effect, Shurfeng suddenly found it much more difficult to control the Blood Demon, the demon's movements becoming sluggish. What a powerful poison! Shurfeng was slightly surprised when he checked the debuff. Paralyzing Venom. Inflicts 30,000 damage every 0.8 second for 12 seconds. While the venom is still in effect, decreases reaction speed by 40%, attack speed by 30%, and movement speed by 30%. Effects can be stacked up to 10 times. The majority of toxins in God's domain only cause victims to lose HP over time. Very few could inflict a paralysis effect, much less be stackable. Although the Blood Demon possessed high magic resistance, and could mitigate a portion of the damage it received, if the toxin was stacked 10 times, even the Blood Demon would fall in no time. Moreover, the toxin being stacked boosted not only the dot but also the speed reduction debuff. If that happened, the Blood Demon would have an increasingly difficult time blocking the attacks of the Dark Scorpions, which possessed considerably high combat standards. The mutated Dark Scorpion's combat standard was even at the level of an ordinary expert player. In the next moment, the Dark Scorpions launched another wave of attacks at the Blood Demon. Due to the venom, the Blood Demon had great difficulty defending itself. A series of damages ranging from several tens of thousands to several 100,000 appeared above the Blood Demon's head, its HP plummeting. The number of paralyzing venom stacks also increased from 1 to 4. Now, the Blood Demon was taking minus 120,000 damage from the venom every 0.8 second. Its reaction speed had also decreased by 60%, and its attack and movement speed by 50%. Even though the Blood Demon was higher leveled, it would not last very long against the Dark Scorpions at this rate. Thank goodness I prepared Primordial Scrolls. Glancing at the mutated Dark Scorpion, Shifeng then commanded the heroic spirit to cast the Tier 2 spell Healing Wind. A light green gale immediately enveloped the Blood Demon. In the next moment, not only did the paralyzing venom debuff disappear altogether, but the Blood Demon also rapidly recovered the 10% or so HP it lost. In the blink of an eye, it was already back to full HP. Once Healing Wind ended, Shifeng had the heroic spirit cast the Tier 3 spell Earthen Vine. Suddenly, vines sprouted beneath the Dark Scorpion's legs and bound the monsters completely. Although the Dark Scorpions managed to cut and snap the vines in their struggles, new vines would always replace the broken ones, greatly restricting the mobility of the Dark Scorpions. Moreover, the Earthen Vines also dealt minus 50,000 damage every second to the Dark Scorpions, and the skill lasted for a full 20 seconds. This skill was perfect against monsters without control removal skills. After the Dark Scorpions were restricted, the Blood Demon brandished its great sword and began exterminating the Dark Scorpions. Each of its normal attacks caused around minus 40,000 damage, while its skills dealt over minus 100,000 damage each. Meanwhile, Shifeng also cast Flame Domain on the group of monsters. Although Shifeng was suppressed by the world and his basic attributes had decreased significantly, the sacred sword he wielded doubled the damage he dealt dark creatures. Following which, damages over minus 200,000 appeared above the Dark Scorpions' heads. Moreover, the damage Flame Domain dealt also increased by 20% with every passing second. By the time Flame Domain ended, the Lord-ranked Dark Scorpions had lost nearly one-third of their maximum HP. Shifeng then executed Lightning Edge and dealt each of the Dark Scorpions over minus 200,000 damage per second for 5 seconds. At this time, the heroic spirit standing beside Shifeng finished casting the Tier 3 curse Star Fury. Suddenly, streaks of starlight started raining down from the sky and bombarding the Dark Scorpions. The might of the AoE spell was stronger than even Shifeng's Flame Domain, each wave of attacks dealing over minus 600,000 damage to the Dark Scorpions. Moreover, unlike normal AoE spells, Star Fury aimed only at enemies within range. Hence, the curse did not do any damage to the Blood Demon. In total, 7 waves of starlight descended on the Dark Scorpions. By the time Star Fury ended, not only had the Dark Scorpions lost a significant amount of their HPs, but they also fell into a heavily injured state, their basic attributes, defense, and combat power decreasing to a certain extent. This turn of events allowed the Blood Demon to deal even more damage. Now, even its normal attacks inflicted around minus 80,000 damage on its tough opponents. Very quickly, the first Dark Scorpion fell to Shifeng's group. Afterward, even after Earthen Vine's duration ended, the heavily injured Dark Scorpions didn't pose much of a threat. To make the battle more efficient, Shifeng decided to have the Blood Demon focus on only dodging the mutated Dark Scorpion's attacks while maintaining its assault on the other Dark Scorpions. This strategy rendered the mutated Dark Scorpion useless in the battle. The Great Lord could only watch as its subordinates got picked off one after another. Only after the disposal of all the Lord-ranked monsters did Shifeng have the Blood Demon trade blow for blow with the Great Lord, foregoing all forms of evasion and defense. Although the Blood Demon would get poisoned and receive significant amounts of damage from doing so, there was the healing provided by the heroic spirit. Due to the Blood Demon's all-out offensive, the mutated Dark Scorpion lost HP rapidly. 72%, 70%, 65%. After roughly 10 minutes had passed since the battle began, Shifeng activated Divine Providence and landed the last hit on the mutated Dark Scorpion. Following which, the mutated Dark Scorpion let out an agonized screech as it collapsed before Shifeng's feet. At the same time, the Great Lord also dropped 8 items around its corpse. The monsters here are really tough. Sherfone breathed out a sigh of relief when he saw that the mutated dark scorpion was finally dead. Although Sherfone had long since known that the monsters in higher planes were powerful, he had never imagined that the monsters of the darkness world would be this powerful. Just dealing with a level 68 Great Lord had already taken him so much effort. If not for him having summoned a healing-type heroic spirit, he could have come out the loser in this battle. With how powerful the monsters in the darkness world were, if he came across a Grand Lord, he would most likely have no choice but to run away. However, while dealing with the dark scorpions was indeed very difficult, the loot they dropped pleased Sherfone greatly. The 9 Lord-ranked dark scorpions had dropped a total of 37 items. Among them, 15 were level 60 mysterious iron equipment, and 8 were level 60 bronze equipment. The drop rate here was considerably better than on the continent of God's domain, where Lord-ranked monsters past level 50 dropped only bronze equipment, while mysterious iron equipment was dropped by only High Lords and Great Lords, and generally just 1 or 2 pieces of equipment at that. Aside from weapons, equipment, and materials, the 9 dark scorpions also dropped 3 darkness stone fragments. The drop rate for the fragments was considerably better than what Sherfone initially expected it to be. However, compared to the loot of the 9 dark scorpions, the loot of the mutated dark scorpion was much more attractive. Of the 8 items dropped, 3 were equipment, a level 60 secret silver cloth armor robe and 2 set pieces for the level 60 secret silver plate armor Dark Devourer set. Level 60 secret silver set equipment would be considered top-notch equipment in the game when players reach level 60. Moreover, the Dark Devourer set was actually an 8-piece set. The set's level requirement would be lowered to level 55 when 4 set pieces were gathered, and further to level 50 if one managed to complete the set. If players could equip level 60 secret silver set equipment at level 50, just the basic attributes they could gain from the set alone would surpass that of level 50 dark gold set equipment. Not to mention, the Dark Devourer set's other set effects were also plenty amazing. The set's 2-piece set effect reduced the damage sustained from Tier 2 spells by 40% and spells below Tier 2 by 70%. Meanwhile, the 6-piece set effect raised the wearer's strength and endurance by up to 30% when attacked. If he could allow the guild's MTs and berserkers to equip the Dark Devourer set, they would be practically invincible among those of the same level. Aside from the 3 pieces of equipment, the mutated Dark Scorpion also dropped 2 Darkness Stone fragments. As for the remaining 3 items, 2 of them were paralyzing venom potions, which could be applied to weapons, allowing one's attacks to inflict a weakened version of the paralyzing venom debuff on targets. Each potion could be used 3 times, and each application lasted 30 minutes. Although the debuff imposed was nowhere near as strong as the mutated Dark Scorpions, it was still quite effective against both players and monsters. Following which, Sherfone took out from his bag the last item the Great Lord dropped. This item was a crystal that gave off a black and white glow. When he looked at the crystal, a hint of excitement flashed in his eyes. The mutated Darkness Energy Crystal. It was one of the rarest loot available in the darkness world. In fact, it was a treasure highly sought after by players belonging to the dark forces. This was an item that would only be dropped by darkness-type mutated monsters. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.